Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege to say hello to the one and only Steve Vai. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Doug, nice to be here, brother. Thank you for the invite.
With great pleasure. So you are witnessing the third episode of Doppler's Gear Garage. We have Steve Vai and friends. This is going to be a very special episode for me for a number of reasons. First of all, Steve Vai is somebody that is near and dear to pretty much anybody who loves guitar's heart. But he's somebody that I've known for over 3 decades. He's somebody that has been a musical mentor, a musical inspiration, a juggernaut in the music business, and somehow in the midst of all of this, I've actually been in his physical proximity for 30 plus years, and it just keeps getting better. So, Steve, where are you joining us from this evening?
Well, I'm in Southern California, Los Angeles, Encino, at my home studio. Kind of see it in the background. I call it the Harmony Hut, and it's kind of like my my man cave.
So, home studio, you have been a master of the studio. So we're gonna do a little bit of dialing back of the clock here at a couple of different key points as we go through our journey tonight. First of all, when I first met you, you were living in a little stucco house out in Sylmar.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
that was the first studio I built. It was Stucco Blue Studios.
So every time I drive through Sylmar on my way through Los Angeles to and from, I basically get goosebumps because it was an 18-year-old or 19-year-old Doug Doppler driving into Los Angeles, and I'd had this guitar teacher. His name was Joe, and Joe was this. You might have known him, I think. So
we had the same guitar teacher.
We had the same guitar teacher, and one of the neat things that we'll get to is talking about some of those common links as I watched some of the stuff that you poured into Videology. What was interesting is that was a very unique point in your career in that you had gone from being young Steve Vai in Frank Zappa's band to being a solo act in Los Angeles playing local clubs.
Yeah.
So I want to start off there. What was it like to be at that particular junction in your career?
Well, it was, it had its absolutely exciting moments because I moved out to California when I was 20, right? Actually, the day after my 20th birthday. And I immediately started working with Frank. And that was a cushion, because I was making some money and I saved. And then when Frank basically, after the 82 European tour, he kind of went underground for a couple of years and started working on Synclab stuff. So I really needed to get on with whatever I was going to do. And I really didn't have any expectations. I just knew that I liked making music. I loved playing the guitar, and I always wanted to have my own studio. That was my first little studio was just in the bedroom of my apartment on Fairfax Street. And I just had like a 4-track recorder, but that was like amazing, And I saved with Frank, and then I bought this house. I saved enough to put a down payment on this house in Sylmar, the one that you saw. And it was perfect because it had a shed out back that was like a tool shed that old man Ray Kwall built. And I spent like 4 months converting it into a studio, and that was so exciting for me. Just I loved building it. I mean, it was already built. I was just insulating and all this kind of thing, and I loved the gear. And I was very fortunate because I got this console from Carvin, and Frank loaned me a bunch of gear, and I had this 1/4-inch 8-track machine, and it was so great living out in Sylmar like that because Pia was my wife, was living with me, but we weren't married at the time, but we had all the rooms in the house were filled with people, and they were paying rent, and so I didn't have any money, but I didn't need really much. And for a couple of years there, that's when I made Flexible, and it was just such a great time because I didn't have I mean, if you ever heard Flexible, you wouldn't believe that a guy like that would have expectations of having a career in the music business, you know. But I just was doing what I really enjoyed, and I recorded tons and tons and tons of stuff. And then I just thought, well, why not release something? See if I could release it. And then that, that was Flexible.
Well, the interesting thing is the first time I heard Flexible was in when I studied with Joe, was in the little back room in the back of Secondhand Guitar Company on what used to be Grove Street, what's now MLK. And he had this little cassette player back there, and he popped in your cassette, and he said, "Oh, take a listen to Steve Vai. This is his new record." And out pops Little Green Men. No, the Attitude Song. And then Little Green Men, and they're both very unique compositions, and I think the contrast between the two was very striking. But the thing is that hearing the Attitude Song for the first time, it's interesting because we got a chance to chat the other night, and I remember you talking about the Steve Vai that came in. I went down to Los Angeles to go to GIT, and the Steve Vai that came and visited. It was interesting to hear you recollect that guy. The interesting thing is, for me, seeing that Steve Vai, it was like seeing a 24-year-old Joe Satriani, because I think you were right around 24 at that point, where so much of that musical persona was so already there. And I think I've got a couple of photos. Let's see how the slideshow is going to go. Now, this is actually really cool because there's a guy named Marco Llanos who happened to be at these same shows that I was going to. And it turns out it's Marco Llanos' birthday today. So today. So Marco, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Marco.
So
Marco was great. He was one of the guys that he just liked the band, The Classified, and that was my band at the time. And he always had a camera. He was a great photographer, and thank God, because he came to all the gigs and he came to the house, and he shot the only real photos that exist from that period.
Let's see if I can actually get to screen sharing working with perfection. And here we go. Oh, look at this. Here we go. Now, for me, this was a walk down memory lane. And so we've got a bunch of shots here from different venues. Steve, do you remember where this was? Was there's some that were from Club Lingerie, but I don't think this is Club Lingerie.
I think that's the country club in Reseda. There was not very, I mean, we played like maybe 6 different clubs in town.
I remember Filthy McNasty's out in the valley.
Yeah. There was that. There was FM Station, the Country Club. I think it was called the Country Club.
Yeah.
The Spirit Club.
Spirit, right.
Lounge. What was it? Something Lounge?
Now take a look at this.
Yeah.
So we were chatting before. We don't think that is Steve's boogie, but that guitar has been on a little bit of a
journey. You know whose boogie that was? That I believe that might have been Dweezil's.
Ah, got it. You mean like that Dweezil? That
Dweezil. Look at that little young Dweezil.
He's still a handsome guy, but he was devilishly handsome. So that was, and I was briefly teching for you for one show, and I remember he sat in on that show. That was awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Now, the neat thing is that in a little later on in the show, we're going to get a chance to meet a guy named Mike Mesker, who has been involved on a number of different things as an art director, but the straps in particular. So note the vintage Fender strap that would have come with that guitar, most likely.
Probably, yeah.
Anything about this particular shot that before we move to the next?
That was the whatever that lounge was. It was something lounge. I can't remember, but. Well, Stu and I, we met in college, and he was in the band when we were in college. The band was Axis. That was the name of that band. And then when I moved out to California, I begged Stu to move, and he came, and we played together, and he was always great, but that was my first real Strat, my first real guitar. I got that guitar when I was probably 16. I had other guitars, but they're all really bad. And yeah, I used that guitar all the way through high school, through college, through Frank, all the way up to when I got into Alcatraz. Then I needed something with a little more horsepower.
Coming to Los Angeles, you must have had ideas of what it was going to be like. Did you ever have any idea it was going to be what it's become?
Well, I wanted to move to Los Angeles since I was 12. Yeah, I don't know why. I just had a pull, and I used to find maps of the United States and just circle Los Angeles. And when I got here, it was very different. For me personally, it's so much better now because back then, I mean, I remember arriving in LAX and it's not a nice drive into town. There was all these oil digging machines and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is this? And then there was smog, and the smog was horrific. And they used to have these smog alerts where if it got to a stage 4, they recommended you just don't even go out. And you would look up into the sky and every day you'd see like a layer of green and orange, and it was just, then the emissions laws changed and it cleaned up, and things just kind of grew and a lot of little cute places started to develop. So Los Angeles, I like it.
Excellent. Well, this book, one of the things that we talked about was the idea that we were hopefully going to get a chance to geek out on some theory. So one of the things that I've been enjoying, and obviously a ton of people have been enjoying as well, is these live streams. And the ear training one that you did in particular last week really got me thinking about a lot of things that I would love to delve into.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned this experience of being at Berkeley, lying in the bunk, I think, having somebody play chords and listening to the notes and the voicing. And as we talked the other night, one of the things that kind of came up was, you kind of have a Steve Vai level of gifting. And the neat thing about, we've gotten to, I suppose, get to know each other better through these guitar camps. And so kind of like, you're kind of the star pitcher that comes and throws the pitch. And I'm out there somewhere in center field catching the fly balls and really kind of seeing people after, at various levels of expertise, skill, practice, all of those things, kind of after they've had a chance to digest the main course. And, the interesting thing is kind of helping people reach that place that I think a lot of guitar players, if you will, is that piece of fruit that they're trying to get to on the tree that's elusive. So one of my goals for tonight was to figure if we could get pretty much every guitar player that's watching this that much closer to that thing. And so ear training is the place that I would like to start. In terms of hearing the major scale, what is the strongest advice you have for just kind of getting really comfortable with the sound of the major scale?
Well, as I always talk about, and it's pretty prevalent in the Videology book, I promote the idea that there's two levels of learning, basically. There's two ways to approach something. There's the academic level, the intellectual, theoretical, the action level, where you're working, and then there's the experiential level where you actually own something like the major scale. So to own the major scale, there's the academic aspect of it, which is this is a major scale. It's got a major, there's all the information about it. Like this is the root, this is a major second, this is a major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, et cetera, right? But that makes up one small aspect of what the major scale really is. Well, the thing that I try to promote is to capture the actual aura, the sound, the flavor, the personality of the scale. Otherwise, you're playing scales. So you know what I mean. If you play a major scale, and or a major 7 chord or something like that. It has a personality to it, and that's really the gist of the ear training. It's you don't really even need to well, along the path of ear training, uh, learning intervals and things like that are important, but it's kind of learning an atmosphere. You know, it's studying an atmosphere, and what the harmonic structure of a progression or anything like that, or a jam or a vamp or something like that. What's the atmosphere of it? You know, the what kind of perfume is it letting off? You know what I mean? And that if your ears are developed, it's very helpful, because then when you go to respond, you don't have to think so much. You know, you if you own the scale, then as soon as you hear it, you don't even have to know what key. You don't even have to know it's B flat major or F sharp. Your fingers kind of just they grow eyes, so to speak. That's the term I use. You know, and you have an intuitive kind of understanding of, if I go to this note that's a whole step away, it's not going to be right. You know, it's going to be completely off. So you kind of develop this radar just by listening. And I think that's a very healthy way to approach playing, because then it opens you up to really finding the things in you that might come more naturally in a creative way, as opposed to soloing by knowing the scale position. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of thing.
So there we go. This is one of my favorite photos. Let's see if I can get this to come up like this. There we go. So this was from, there we go. This is probably my favorite personal Steve Vai photo. And hopefully,
I can't see it.
Oh wait, hang on. Gotta share screen, just one moment. Yeah, there we go. Just one second.
Be embarrassing me, Doug.
I'm doing just fine embarrassing myself. Here we go. There, and action. So that photo is my favorite Steve Vai ever. And what I love about that, and if with your permission, I want to go deep into modes here, because first of all, the modes are a giant mystery for so many guitar players. They're really poorly taught in so many different instances. And so what I loved about this was, first of all, you know, this is kind of watching that common ground that I learned from Joe, and seeing it come out of your hands as you're drawing the stuff on the dry erase board. Mm-hmm. So, you know, first of all, what you've done there, which I absolutely love, is if you look from top to bottom on each of those rows for major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, mixed Lydian, minor, and Locrian, Aeolian being synonymous with minor. And so the thing is, if you take a look at the twos, you're going to see as you go through there, Phrygian and Locrian have got a flat 2. The threes, Dorian, Phrygian, minor, and Locrian have flat 3s. Lydian, I also affectionately refer to as the Steve Vai mode, has a sharp 4. Because, so, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment, and you've done such a great job of setting me up. I am pretty much in mode geek heaven here. As we're looking at mixed Lydian, it's got the flat 7. As you look at minor, it's got the flat 3, 6, and 7. Locrian's got a flat 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So what's really neat about this is you can read this chart from top to bottom and from left to right. So you can see what each of those modes have, but you can also then begin to go, okay, well, which modes have a natural 2? Which ones have a flat 2? And begin to slice and dice these modes in some interesting ways. And the other thing about essentially the way you've laid that out is it with the exception of what's going on up above where you've written it for the key of C, that's effectively the pitch axis, which was one of the things that Joe drilled into my head very early on, which is the idea of having comfort around being able to see multiple modes played over a common root and be able to slice and dice them. So as soon as my mouse decides to come back, I'm going to come back to you. Mouse, be nice. There we go. Thank you.
That's a rat you got there.
I got a rat. That's right. There we go. So there is the academic side of this, and so the goal here is to not just wrap around the academic, because as you put in the foreword of this book, and honestly, you know, the foreword of a book usually tells you about 90% of what you're going to get, because it's filled with fluff. You just got a book of fluff. But the thing that I love about the foreword in here is you're like, look, you can choose to ignore this, and you may have the musical gift that you're going to be able to do just fine without it. That's entirely possible. But if you're really madly passionate about this thing and cannot keep your hands away from it, chances are this stuff's going to serve you. So not in the just the knowledge side of it, but in the harmonic side of it, that ability to, for example, scale sing each one of those modes and actually harmonically have that point of connection is one of the things that allows people to identify the sound of that major scale or identify the Dorian mode. So I'm actually going to dare. So I watched you sing the other day, so I'm going to sing because I'm going to do it. So the idea is
oh boy.
So the idea is the ability to articulate each of the different modes and be able to go major 2 3, Dorian 2 flat 3, Phrygian flat 2 flat 3, Lydian 2 3, go to the sharp 4 for Steve Vai, and so on and so forth, and be able to have that internalized is an important way to have that in your ear, such that when you come to the instrument, you can figure that out by touch, and also when you hear it sonically, you recognize that. So delving in that next level deeper, one of the things that you were doing the other day was destroying, in a good way, Bad Horsey. And it's sitting over there at the tonic. So I would love it if you would be so kind as to reveal, when you're thinking about or feeling the things that come out as you play over that, what is the range of emotions that are being expressed? How do you manifest that emotion, transfer onto the instrument? And at the same time, you also talking about, you can hear the note leading, you hear it coming. Can you expound upon that, please?
I'll do my best. Well, first, I'll assume that there's a particular amount of technique that a player already has. And for something like, if I'm talking about Bad Horsey, that it's capturing an experience, you know, and that, I mean, as a songwriter, you write songs based on all sorts of things that you make up in your mind, you know, the sky's the limit, you can do whatever you want. And I've enjoyed writing songs based on all sorts of things. But Bad Horsey came about, it started with Crossroads, where I was reading the script and it said, Jack Butler makes a sound like a train, you know, and I thought, well, I know how to do that, you know, tune down and just go gong gong woo woo, you know. And it worked great for the film. And what was really cool was then Eugene, the boy that I was, you know, I was the devil's guitar player in this film, and he had to respond with a train, and that was Ry Cooder that played the part. And it was so fascinating to hear Ry's idea of a train. You know, it sounded just as cool, if not cooler, but I liked that riff, and I thought one day I'll write a song with it. So then some years later, I had this wicked ass dream, and I explained it in one of my last live streams, but it was basically this silly dream where I was in this field and I was on this giant horse, and there was a train that was chasing us, and we couldn't run away because there was all this grass. You know, we couldn't see where the tracks were, and it was like a dream thing where the train is, wherever we go, it just kept coming towards us, right? So at one point, the horse turns and faces the train and turns into this is a dream now, you know, and it turns into this like half horse, half metal locomotive, right? And it just starts now going towards the train, you know, because in a dream, you got to face your fears, you know? So there was an intensity to that, and I got a big kick out of it. So I thought there's a visual for a song. So when I built the track for Alien Love Secrets, the album, when I built the track for Bad Horsey, the actual record was, I wanted to keep it very simple, bass, drums, and guitar through the whole record, you know? And it's a EP too, so it's not very long. And so I took all these samples of like horses whinnying and going, you know, and trains going, you know, and it's mixed into the track. So this creates an atmosphere. So then as I go to perform a song, there's various things that are going on in the background of my mind. And one of them in the background is to relax, just keep the body very relaxed, because then all your movements are more fluid and your hands are looser, and you're not entertaining all these other thoughts, so that I focus on that, but mostly I focus on the intention of the song. So a song like Bad Horsey and the dream and what it means to me was very aggressive, so everything, the melody was based, the melody was the horse, and I just love doing that, and so when I'm playing it, in my mind, I'm on that horse and we're going towards the train that you asked. But that creates an emotional sort of frame of mind that has to come out in your playing. So, and it's also a great way to go very deep into the notes, to like be connected with every note. A song like that, Bad Horse, it's very, I say this, but it's very easy to play. It's an easy one for me. That's why I chose to do it. I didn't have a lot of time to practice all these songs, but, and I love the way it feels. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. And you can do that with any song that you perform. See, a lot of times, musicians will approach a song, and like if a solo section comes up or they're trying to write a lyric, or usually we'll talk guitar, you have to kind of take a look. You got to stand back and ask yourself, what's going on in my head while this is happening, and you'd be surprised, what I know for me in the past, all sorts of things go on in your mind, it's like, and a lot of them are very concerning things, and what scale, what notes am I doing this, or how's my tone sound, this guy is better than me, or the audience, do they like me? And these are kinds of and they're very, they get in the way of your connection. So when you make a habit out of trying to being the intention of the song. You have to be the intention of the song, and you keep your attention on that, and relax. There's a lot of room for stuff to flow.
10 questions that I'd love to ask them all, but for the sake of time, awesome. One of the amazing things about this period that I've enjoyed so much, I've known you through a number of different phases, but this has been really a pleasure to kind of, there's an intimacy that you've opened your you've opened your world. Intimacy. I think everybody, when people started showing up doing this at every single show, it was freaky. You're just like, where you used to being able to capture a vibe, now all of a sudden, like, that's going to be 2 minutes of somebody's YouTube or Facebook post, and if it happens to be the wrong 2 minutes, and I don't know about you, but you kind of start thinking about that. Like, there was an initial period of time, it's like, this kind of sucks. And the irony is for the person that's filming it, it's the greatest thing ever. So it's a very uncomfortable balance. But it's been really a pleasure to watch you, and honestly, the technology, as you've just gotten more comfortable with this whole thing. And actually, it's, I don't know about you, but I find it very intimidating to just turn it on, start streaming, and start playing, because it's not like you have a moment on a stage to kind of go, the lights have come down, I've just pulled the tremolo out of my guitar, it's Madison Square Garden, hand me another guitar. All right, you know what?
I do not usually do live things like that, because it's like I played the Crying Machine live a couple of sessions ago, and I didn't seemed like some people liked it, but there was some mistakes, a couple of bad notes, not bad. I mean, but I thought, I don't want to go live anymore. And I thought, what am I waiting for? What am I hiding? There's nothing to hide. Just do it. If you screw up, you screw up. And I've been in many situations where things have gone wrong, but you just go with it. You figure it out. You make a joke out of it.
Alcatraz. What was the name of the ballroom? Pasadena.
Perkins Palace.
Come out. The audience is screaming. What are they screaming?
Oh no, this was the day before in Riverside.
In Riverside.
The first show, yeah.
The very first show.
Yeah, they were chanting Yngwie.
Yes, they did.
Yngwie was in the band, and most people were coming to see him. And the band, Yngwie walked out basically, and I got the gig, and I had one day to learn the entire set. And I'm nothing like Yngwie, I mean, I love Yngwie. He's my brother, but our playing styles are wildly different, and I remember that nobody, excuse me, nobody announced that he wasn't in the band, and nobody knew who I was, because I was with Frank, this was right after Frank, and yeah, I was walking out on the stage and walking out to the stage, and the entire audience was chanting Yngwie. And then this skinny kid with green, black, and white flamed pants gets on stage and started playing. Boy, the looks on their face. The audience went dead, and they're just looking at me.
I think I saw the second show.
Yeah, I think the second show was Perkins Palace.
Walked out, first note, first song, broken string. You pick up the second guitar, broke the high E string again. And to the cavernous, like it's been, the Yngwie is still echoing in the air.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the second show, I don't think people knew very much. We didn't have internet.
Didn't have the internet. Nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
The amazing thing is that, first of all, you did, what was the song that you did the tapping thing on? Too drunk to live. Too
drunk to live. I think that's the name of it, yeah.
And it was masterful. I mean, because Yngwie was, this thing, and you're doing it with two hands, and it was like, but how, as any guitar player, the point of the moral of the story is, how do you attempt to find a vibe after jumping off the cliff and everybody's, and they're sending their buffaloes after you? They're like, let's make sure Mr. Vai really got it. How do you come back after that?
Well, it's kind of funny that I've put myself in that situation, or I've been in that situation quite a few times. You can't really give it much thought, or else you'd go crazy. I mean, you'd be like, well, these people don't want to see me. What am I doing here? But I joined a band, and I just thought, I'm just going to do my best. What else can you do? And I found it pretty amusing, actually, because, I mean, to stand on the stage that first night and see everybody just staring at me, and I just go, and what are you going to do? I was lucky because some people were, well, everybody was upset, but then they started to watch, and they didn't clap, but nobody left.
And they didn't throw stuff. It was actually,
they didn't throw stuff. I figured, okay, I got by. But you just go with it. It was the same kind of thing when I joined Dave Roth. His, I mean, Van Halen fans know the guitar behind that voice. So it's kind of a sacred connection there, Edward and Dave. And, I'm sure people were considering how can anybody or anything, stack up to that? Whose balls are big enough to even try, Well, I couldn't think of any of that, because you don't compete with Edward, you just don't. You'd be an idiot if you did, or Yngwie, You just do what you can do. And really, frankly, they were incredible situations because they really pushed me as a player. As a matter of fact, when I joined Alcatraz, I changed my style completely of picking, because before that I had this really weird kind of, didn't sound good. The tone was terrible.
And the up
And then
arm.
yeah, it was like, over the neck a little bit. You can see it in some Zappa videos, but the tone was awful, and I really needed to get my stuff together there. So I completely redid my picking style, and that really improved. And then when I was doing the Dave thing, the energy of Edward's playing was very inspirational, because I thought, okay, this is rock and roll. This is Edward Van Halen. This is Van Halen, and that band, the sound was like the sound of Van Halen always sounded like a fire fury or something to me. It was like a hysteria, it's so fantastic. So that forced me to raise my bar, up my game. For me, I mean, not towards what Edward was doing, because I couldn't, and I didn't want to. I liked the way I played, and so you just jump into it.
Phenomenal. One of the interesting things about your career, and for those of you that maybe didn't see the kind of the social media post, one of the things that's going to happen as we proceed in the show, the focus is going to shift from Mr. Vai to the people that are around Steve, on a daily basis, helping him just be able to do the things.
My A team.
What's that?
My A team.
Or the V team.
The V team.
I've
got such great people that I get to work with. I can't even believe how lucky I am. They're all just, well, first of all, they're much smarter than me at what they do. And like you're gonna see Mike Mesker. Mike Mesker is a class act from head to foot. He's just an amazingly artistic, creative person. And Steven, do you have Steven and Stephanie coming on?
The rock stars Steven and Steffi. So I've got them in two groups. We've got kind of the team Vai, and then there's the Vai gear.
Yeah.
So
have you ever seen Stephanie play the guitar?
Yeah. Have you ever seen the two?
Oh my God.
Did you see them doing what was it? The Star Spangled Banner, but the shred version?
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating. I mean, they're just so great and so smart and creative. And it's funny because Stephanie keeps me from getting in trouble, because I'm like, post this, and she's like, Steve, you don't want to post that, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I shouldn't. But who else you got coming on? You got Greg. Oh my gosh, Greg Wurth.
Yeah.
Greg's been working with me in the studio here for, I think, like 14 or 15 years or something. And he's just, I mean, I'd be dead in the water without him around here. Greg is an incredible engineer, and he also loves gear, so he's totally on top of all the good stuff, all the new stuff, all the real fine gear that's coming out. Because I can't, I mean, I hear about what's going on through him, and plus he knows how to fix things when they break. The other day, right, yesterday, I did an under it all yesterday. Right before we went on, I hit a bottle of water and it spilled into the console, and the whole console locked up, and the computer, the audio, nothing was working. And he came over and he just fixed it all. I mean, he had to take everything apart and blow dry it and and everything. But yeah, Greg's fantastic. Who else? Thomas. You got Thomas.
I got Thomas. So
you are gonna get such a kick out of him. He's one of my favorite people. He's the funniest guy, and he's just like I can't imagine how he works so hard. He's in his mid to late 70s, and he humps gear more powerfully than the young guys. And I'm like, Thomas, look, you have an out. Whenever you want to quit all this, that it's okay. no, 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 no. I work until I die, you know, and that's how that's how I keep fit. And boy, he's so freaking funny. I'm You'd have to be on tour because that's when all the good stuff comes out. No secrets at sea.
And then I've got Jon Bingham from Synergy.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, which is going to be great. And we also have, so you haven't met Dave from Isoacoustics, but he makes the speaker isolators that are under the monitors and
Yeah,
under cabinets.
yeah.
And so Eric Johnson's using those. And what's neat about that is that specifically for guitar players, delays and reverbs have a tendency to disappear into muddiness pretty quickly. So, boom. Yeah. And then we have one of my favorite guys ever, Mike Orrigo. So all these people, I've spent like an hour, like there's the show before the show. So I've got like 7 hours of this amazing hang time with these folks, kind of the secret world of Steve Vai.
Yeah,
and you know
they know it.
They know it.
That's and when I work with people, it's usually for a long time. Like I met Thomas the second day that I moved out to LA. You know, that's when I met him, and I've toured with him with Frank, and then we started working together, and Mike Mesker's, I've been working with him for, I don't know exactly how long, but I know it's probably well over 15 years now.
I better make sure I didn't miss anybody. The worst thing about getting a big crew of people together is like you get somebody. That sinking. Oh, it is the worst feeling. All right, so we also talked about the Chicago NAMM show. So I got to go back. So and that show came up in my conversation with Mike Orrigo today. So here's the thing. I'm not looking for confirmation, but I'm going to tell you the rumor. The rumor was that endorsement deal was $250,000. So that was the word on the street. I know it's a great rumor to have. $250 million is what the rumor was, and Vai was like. But the neat thing was that was the buzz of the show, and I came out and I flew out. It's not here. I think we talked about it the other night. So I have all my Joe notes. So Joe basically harassed me about harmonizing the Phrygian dominant mode in chord scales. And of course, I didn't do very well. It was a very long flight. But, so that I think
a teacher,
great teacher. I remember the flight and I still have the notes. So, but cool. It was the first show. I got to dial the clock back. This is funny because you'll appreciate this. We talked the other night about that MI clinic, and you briefly said, that was kind of a different Steve Vai. The neat thing is that to me that was kind of the same. It was like this. Like mm-hmm. I loved the DLR David Lee Roth version of you because you were so cool. To watch you get to be that guy and have that much fun doing that on stage was one of, because to have gone from the Classified, seeing you doing that, to see you doing that, it's like, whew.
Well, that gig required you to be a rock star, and when I joined that band with Dave, he worked very hard with me. He couldn't, he had to make sure that he had the right guys, and I was gawky and thin. I had the body of a noodle, and my movements were just unrefined. And Dave, man, he kicked my ass. I mean, we would get together for hours, and he would, help me to learn how to relate to a large audience. And then he would take me to the gym every day and kick my ass, and we'd go bike riding and running. And so there was so much that I learned from him. And then when we got on the stage, because we were actually hanging out and, the band and, in the basement at his house and jamming and writing for like a year before we actually went into the studio. Wow. And that year was, it was preparation for rock star stuff. And I didn't even realize because I was just still, this guy, driving from my house to somebody's basement. And then when the record came out, it was like, whoa. But that was a different experience. Yeah, it was really great being on that big stage.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So I come back, MI clinic, got the cassette. I've still got it somewhere. And I bring it back and I play it for Joe. And he's like, that's great. Who's that bass player? Kid you not. So fast forward to the Chicago NAMM show, I believe 1987.
Yeah.
It's the trio's first show. So, and I'm kind of coming into the venue there, and I hear the sound, like off in the distance. I'm like, and I had the same thing happen at center staging. I pulled up one day, and I'm like, at the end of the line, I'm like, that's Jeff Beck. Like you know the sound, no matter how near or how far. It's like that's flipping Jeff Beck.
Yeah,
and my wife was like, you're hearing stuff again. I'm like, no, that's Jeff Beck. And sure enough, out he comes. It's just like. So I'm like, that's Steve Vai. And so I make my way, and you're in this little crevice of the club sitting on top of a 112 Marshall combo with wait, hold on. Here we go. Let's see if I can do this without destroying anything. There we go. So this case I got in 1981. And if you look really closely, Steve, you'll recognize that handwriting there, even though it's on a torn piece of paper. So that's Hold for Doug D in Joe's handwriting. So it's a one-space rack. You'll never guess who I got inspired to buy this from.
You got an SD 3000 in there.
Yeah, I sure do. So in any case, so you're sitting on top of a rack, on top of the Marshall, with I think it was, I don't remember which guitar it was, but that night was the first time you guys jammed.
I can't remember.
But that
I'm sure it was Ibanez.
Yeah, I think. But it was the first time you guys had jammed together, I think, in a long time. And, so like, but if you think about that night, it was just one of those moments where it's like, first of all, seeing the two of you guys play together and just the joy and just seeing you guys enjoy each other's company. But also the significance of that moment. It was the first time the trio had played together live. It's the NAMM show where only the things that NAMM shows can happen. And it was just like, it was the maiden voyage of all that stuff to come, and you were there. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was great. It's when I was taking lessons from Joe when I was a boy. I started at probably age 12-ish, and until he moved. First, he moved to Japan for a little while, and then he moved to San Francisco. So he was for about 3 years or so, but the lessons. We jammed a lot, I would go over his house. Sometimes we'd sit in the backyard for hours and hours and just jam and jam and jam. It was so, it was one of my favorite things to do in the whole world because, well, first of all, it's Joe, and he's always had incredible ears. And it was all like, we'd just sit back to back and just play. And I felt safe. I felt cared for. I felt creative. And then when he had moved and I went on my way, it was quite a while before we got to actually play together again, and maybe that was the first time in a while.
It was pretty magical.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. So let's see. I'm just making sure that we don't have somebody trying to knock their way. Oh, that's so funny. So I got to talk about our call the other night because it's kind of funny. So as we're with this Zoom thing, it's not always a perfect science, and so so I look down. I'm on the phone with Billy from Dreamcatcher event, and it's like, oh, Steve Vai's calling. So I was like, hey, can you send me the password? And so I go downstairs, send an email. All of a sudden, I'm like, he's going to ring me now. And, I'm in my bathrobe.
Well, I thought I got a little mixed up, I guess, because I thought that we were doing it then. I thought that was the live event.
So, and you can blame the show host for not providing greater clarity. But the funny thing is over there, because I log into Zoom, I'm like, I can't have Vi show up and like, the equivalent of a digital busy signal. I'm like, so I'm frantically jumping out of my robe, putting on a shirt, trying to slide into the seat here.
Yeah, you were like you had a robe around your waist the whole time.
That was it. It was a fun moment. So the way this is going to work is we've got Steve here for the first hour. Some of these other folks are going to start knocking on the door, and we want to graciously allow Mr. Vi, when he's ready to go, is going to graciously go. What I want to do, because I think we still have 2 minutes, I want to see if I can find a question from somebody on the feed here. Hopefully a really good question is going to be there, and I am not going to be disappointed. And is there a good question? No. No. Doug, you suck. No, that's not what it said. All right, hang on. There we go. No. 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 And of course now there's like 10 questions will flood in. All right. What's next?
Well, I felt inspired to make a record. I know what kind of record I'm going to make right now. I stopped working on the record I was planning on doing, and I've just decided to rip out this record in about 2 weeks. So we'll have to see what happens. That's what I'm working on now.
Look who we have
Rocky!
here.
Oh my God! Wow!
You got Sonica in the background?
Yes, of course. And here from the 70s, a remote. I'll turn it on. Okay.
Oh yeah!
Just quick, look at it. Left to
Ladies
right.
and gentlemen, the one and only Thomas Nordegg.
Yes.
How you doing, Rocky?
Well, if it was any better, I couldn't take it. You know that.
That's right.
All right?
Yep, I know that.
My
Are
answer.
you're okay though? Why don't you come over and say hi sometimes?
Well, I wanted to, but I thought you were totally, the high priest being in some, I don't want to. I'll come in any time. I have so many things to show and tell you.
Uh-oh. Well, come on,
No,
Brian.
daughter.
Next, I'm kind of like going off the grid for a couple of weeks, but in the next 2 weeks, if you want to stop by anytime.
I will,
Yeah.
and I'll surprise you. How's that? Because
Yes.
I got something for you that you'll be so happy. Trust
Okay.
me.
He always
Thank
has
you.
something for me. He brings me stuff all the time. He's the other supplier of all things cool.
Thank you. Wow, the forever youngster. Look at him.
I'm going to be 60 next month.
Hey, I just watched recently. First time I've seen it actually. Donington. Oh my
Which
God.
one, the White Snake one or the DLR?
Yes, White Snake.
White Snake, yeah.
That
I couldn't
was-
believe it either when I watched it.
It was whoa.
I was
Coverdale, nice.
watching it because I just remember the whole time back then, I just never felt like, I always felt like, nah, that wasn't good enough. Nah,
Oh,
good enough.
it was
I
killer,
gotta
man.
get better. And then I'm watching, I'm going, holy shit, man, I can't do that anymore.
Transfixed. Yes.
You know,
Wow.
that was
Yeah.
one of the lovely things about. So I've seen some of the Donning. There's the guitar solo has got like 5 bazillion views on it, and you're just destroying the guitar on that. So that's been out for a while, but the showmanship and the craftsmanship, like that was.
Yeah. That's it. That was a new world order at that point.
So
Thank you. You know, Thomas, I did an interview today with Mohini.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Whoa! How is she? How
She's
is she?
great. She looked beautiful. She was, just playing her butt off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we're kind of like doing the thing we do when we get together. So,
and look what we've got next.
Greg,
Ladies and so hang on. Not everybody knows who all these people are. So I'm like, so the goal of this is it's kind of like the coolest Steve Vai green room ever. Okay, so depending, So in your upper right, you've got Thomas Nordegg, the man, the myth, the legend. In the lower left, we've got Greg Wurth, the guy that extracts water from consoles. Right, and the great thing about
I
these
told him
two,
that story.
if you can
Hail,
remember,
Happy Friday! Happy Friday!
if you could remember one of these two's name, you got the other. So we got Stephanie and Stephen Bradley, and
Wow.
And what's the name of the dog?
Mildred, she was snoring, so we brought her in, and she loves Steve, so
Mildred is the
she's here.
best. Mildred,
Was that a Steve High?
Yes.
So, Thomas, the tech extraordinaire, Greg, the Pro Tools genius, and as we were geeking out talking about Blackmagic and HDMI mixers, the Bradleys are social media genii. They're responsible for about 10 million Facebook and Instagram fans being fed well, and Steve has this amazing team of people. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to just kind of let you guys kind of talk a little bit about what you do, what makes working with Steve so incredibly unique, and some of the funnest moments in the process of doing that.
you know what? I'm going to let you guys get on with that because they'll probably be more comfortable with me gone.
Steve, thank you
So,
so much.
Thank you very much, Doug. And it's good to see you guys. And
Yeah.
all right, we'll see you around. Have a great little chat.
All
Tell
right.
lies.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Steve. Really appreciate it.
You got it.
Okay, now no, we're not going to do that. So the way this is going to work from this point on, and for those that choose to hang out, it's only going to keep getting better. Even though Steve has left the room, the neat thing about this is if you are an aspiring musician and want to have a for real career, these are the people that you need to listen to what they're going to have to say, learn from what they've got to say, and try and walk it out, because these folks are the best of the best. After they're here, we're going to bring in the manufacturers as well as Mike Mesker, who is the graphic genius behind a bunch of this stuff. But so the idea is we're going to have each person kind of talk about a specific thing. We're going to take a question or two, and then we're going to jump to the next person. And that way we've got you're going to get something from everybody. And then we're going to go into a round robin and talk about whatever we talk about. Thomas?
Yes, sir.
Is there something that you're like, I want to talk about some Vai-centric thing that you're like, let's go there?
Bicentric, as in
Yes.
eccentric. Well, there's a lot, as we all know. Greg knows a lot about it already, and I'm
Yeah.
sure the two of you. So, Steve is such an intelligent man. It's always there. He's witty, he's sharp. So you never know what he's got coming. So in my dialogues with him, he always has the last word with a piece of humor. In terms of eccentricity, you're talking about technically or just.
I tell you what, let me set you up even further. So the reality is pretty much every time Steve Vai steps out on the stage, the last human being to touch the guitar before Steve Vai destroys it is Thomas. He's the guy that's responsible for making sure it is ready to play. It's got the right tuning. If there's an altered tuning, it feels right. It plays right. All those things, and it's
Even
responsible.
the regular tuning. Just kidding.
And Thomas, so. What's it like doing that? Tell us about
you have to come to a point where it was with Ingwe when I did a couple of Ingwe tours, and with Steve too in the first tour, he was throwing the guitar at the end across the stage to catch. He didn't really tell me, but he was doing it. So you just have to get it. And with Ingwe, it was every night. He did it, in part of the show. So, that's something. And then, of course, I'm nervous too. Make sure everything works. And he's the kingpin, in that band. So there is a certain amount of pressure, but then you sort of, I don't know. I'm just enjoying it. Try to be at ease and not forget cues. As there are always quite a few. And technology helps or doesn't. At times. Backfires. So, ask me. What else?
I want to see if we can get some interaction here from the chat here. So I want to see if we can get a question here or a couple. Who's got a question for Thomas? Come on, bring it to me. Come on. Hang on, it's going to take a minute because there's a little tiny bit of a delay. Hey there, Daniel. Come on. Somebody.
I want to know what all you have in that rack behind you, because that is a hell of a setup.
That's the biggest guitar system in the world. I'm 74. I have nothing to prove. I'm late to my funeral, so I'm good.
Thomas, what's in the rack?
What's that?
What's in the rack? Come on. Inquiring minds want to know.
There will be shortly the head rush looper board. There will be an H9000, as Greg knows all about it. There is just brand new 1248 Motu and the 16A Motu as audio platforms that I had to buy because my new computer would not work with the 828 Mark III, only the hybrid Mark III and so forth. Anyway, so it's pretty deep. You want me to put some screen on it for a little?
Yes.
Yeah. You got the Axe 3, right?
Yes, of course. Come on, every machine. Let me unplug this here quick. And now I will go to flip my screen if it allows me. Hold on.
And Thomas,
Yeah,
while you're over
we go.
there, Kevin Collins also asked, hey, Kevin, how you doing, by the way? Tell us about your special guitar.
Mine?
Yeah, I think he means Sonica.
Well, there's Sonica is my whole system here.
Okay.
Special guitars. Well, I can show you, and my Evo Relic, which is, as I said to Steve, it's actually more special than his Evos.
But wait, but not at the expense of Steven's question. Hang on, sorry. Oh, look at that.
So, Evo Relic, right?
Look at
Made in
that.
Japan, with every little thing on it. Okay. And Steinberger tuners to start with, right? None of this or this. Straight back, you can play notes. I can play actually a note quickly so you can hear it. I grab a wireless, I plug it in, all right? The system's already on. Let's see what happens. Okay. By the way, all my guitars in the back here, Antares auto-tune system, Sustainiac by Alan Hoover, wireless in the guitar, and another wireless. So two wirelesses right here. Why not? 2021, a few days away, right? So let's see. Kill switch. Stay there. Endless, infinite, okay? And look at the rack here. That's full over there. This is still the electric repeater, right? That's one thing you have to do manual to turn both channels on. But if I would record something now here, up there, beat over there. Right? So, I mean, just to give an example, here's the repeater, here's the H9000, here are the two audio platforms, VG8 and VG88 from Japan, custom molded to be not on the floor, but in the rack, Axon Mark III, MIDI timepiece, Fractal 3, and of course the good old Kemper, always standing by. I can play both at the same time. Good switch here, the GT16 by RGM, and here's even the Echoplex Digital Gibson, Steve Vai Overdrive, H9, DD500, and here. Bass set, for instance, right? So, and I can play 4 13-pin platforms, all different colors at the same time. But I would take too long. I want a few more questions to answer. Anyway, here's the guitar, right? Superpower. After 4 minutes of no sound and no movement, I can put the guitar back here now, and it will go to sleep. the lights will go off, and a month later I come by, pick it up, and I'm wireless, ready to plug and play, as if it's my last day. So that's the idea.
So Doug, you need to do like an 8-hour show with Thomas. We've all
correct.
learned.
Yeah,
8 hours is
exactly.
going to not be enough, and I'm down. We'll go 24 hours. He can do 20. Wasn't that the Big Mamma Jamma was 24?
Oh, it was like 52.
3 days or something.
Look at this bass, the best bass, which I have one for buy. It's in the other room. In the world, it's a fretless bass with photo frets. So check this out. I forgot to get that wireless from this guitar. See, pull it out. Already asleep. And now just this bass with no frets, but frets. I mean, you know. And by the way, also 13-pin compatible, so synthesizer full on here, right? 2 volume wheels, crossfader platforms, and I'm gonna bring up the Antares system really quick with the Richards on board guitar here. So see, it turns on the moment I pull it out, right?
You still didn't give it to him?
Pardon me?
You still didn't give that one to him?
No, I've been trying to. He forgot. He didn't even remember.
Oh, I bet you love that.
Anyway, so here we go now. So now Antares is on. Enter Antares here. Now we go to the standard tuning. Right, and now here. Here. Totally in tune and intonated. Some more. Anyway,
Nice.
so
That's awesome.
I'm saying it's in tune and intonated. So why does one not want to have in today's world an Antares auto tune? And if you don't want to use it, just unplug. That's a regular guitar. It's sounding pretty good. Skinner. Subsonic, everything, anytime. So Steinberger tuners, open battery chambers, instant change. Even a musician can change these batteries without interact. Here's another
We'll
wireless.
see.
And this is superpower. Look.
I love it.
Ugh.
We lost him.
No.
Lose us.
Uh-oh.
We've been replaced with an iPad Pro.
Aha. All right. We're going to take up. Thomas is back. Greg, I want to take a moment. Thomas, we're going to come back to you. I want to jump over to Greg. Greg, so you are the tender of Pro Tools and consoles and water spills. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what your day-to-day process?
All right.
And by the way, Chris Stark wants to be your intern, and he says he makes great coffee. And I think he's serious about both. So I've got a couple questions I've posted in both Facebook and YouTube, just saying, hey, if people have got some questions. But let's start with kind of what you do and what you dig the most about what you do.
I just love, getting to check out new gear and fixing problems. Like yesterday, Steve, it was like 5 minutes before he went live stream. I got Steven, myself on call with Vi, and we're on like TeamViewer on his computer trying to figure something out. Pro Tools took a dump. And then while we were trying to fix that, Steve managed to spill water on the console. And I was just like, oh.
In the console. I don't think on.
Yeah, in the console. And he's like, oh yeah, the solo and the mutes just they're all bonkers now. And I was like, oh no. And so that was, that's how days go. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to fix or whatever, but I love the fact that afterwards I was able to go there and actually fix it, and it worked. Cause I was like texting Steven, I was like, I don't know if I can fix that.
Water in the
And we all
console
knew you
is
could.
Yeah.
water in the console is kind of a bad thing.
Yeah, luckily, Steve Furlot built that console really intelligently, and so it's very modular. So there's like 3 power supplies for the different sections because there's different voltages and whatnot. And the way that the modules fit inside, it's kind of angled slots. So Steve managed to dump water in the perfect spot because it just hit the switches and it just rolled right down and hit the ground. So luckily I just got some air and sprayed it out, but I had to, take like 8 modules out to do it. But yeah.
So how did you start working with Steve and kind of, first of all, a little bit about your background, what you did before you started working with Steve. One of the other people asked in the chat, if you were to compare and contrast Steve with some of the other artists, which is a slightly awkward question, but a pointed one, but a good one as well. Kind of, the unique things, and I will tag on that. Just kind of, the approach to helping an artist find that thing that they're chasing. So your background,
Right.
and then kind of the process.
Okay. Well, let me answer that question first,
Awesome,
so I don't
please.
forget.
That's great.
Working with Steve, it's like he pushes things to the limit, and I think from him learning from working with Frank Zappa, he learned that it's like if you can just think of it, it's possible. And so that's something that he's embedded in me. When I first started working with him, it's like I just learned that mentality, and he's right. It's like you push it to a limit, and you do find out if it's possible or not. But you also, that's what's helped gain relationships with manufacturers, because people like Dave and some other people, they took feedback and updated products and stuff like that, and it's been beneficial. And working with Steve, he's one of the only artists that I've worked with that push things in that way. A lot of guys kind of settle with stuff like, oh, this can only do this, and Steve's like, no, I need it to do this. And so it's pushed to build things, into a synergy, this, that. So I don't want to get too far at things, but just answer that question first. My background, I just, got super into engineering. So some people might have already heard about it, but I used to be really into reggae. I still am, actually, but I'm from San Diego, and there's a huge reggae scene. And I just got enamored with like the dub and the mixing, like Lee Scratch Perry, Mad Professor, King Tubby. I was just blown away at what you could do on the mixing desk. And I didn't know that was even possible, because I'm really into music, but I suck at guitar. I used to play bass and guitar in a reggae band, and that's kind of easy, but you take it to the next level, it's not going anywhere. So I got really into recording, and reggae was like, to me, the path that kind of pushed me into that. And through that, I wanted to move to LA and just get into the industry. That's how I was going to get some work and whatnot. And I ran into Neil Citron. I was doing an internship at Scream Studios, which is no longer, but it's down the street from where I live in Studio City, and that's where they mixed like Sublime and tons of records. I don't even want to say, because there's so many. And Randy Alpert actually owned it, which is Herb Alpert's son. So that's a whole other thing. But I was surrounded by these really cool people, and just so happened one of the days I was interning, I was looking at a Sweetwater magazine, looking at some microphones, and Neil Citron came out. He was mixing, and he's like, "What are you looking at?" I was like, "I'm just checking out some microphones." And so we chatted for a little bit, and he introduced himself. He worked with Steve Vai, and to be honest, I didn't really know who Steve Vai was.
Is he a reggae guy? Maybe does some ska?
I mean, I knew of the name because I've seen the guitar, but I just, you know, I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, Rage Against the Machine, Tool, and from that point, I got into reggae. So Steve Vai was not on my radar. But anyways, that was in the back of my mind. And then a few months later, I was trying to look for a real job. Like in my mind, it's like, let me step up from internship to runner, or what is it? Assistant engineer. Yeah. And I was like, if I get that, that's the best thing. And then I ended up getting a hold of Neil, and he was running the mothership. And he's like, yeah, I need an assistant. I'm about to do a project with Quiet Riot, and come down for an interview. And I was kind of nervous. I went down there and talked to him, but we gelled. He's just a really sweet guy, gentle and kind. And I remember I forgot my resume, and I felt like a jackass. I was like, I'm sorry, want me to go back in the car? He's like, no, you don't need that. and anyways, he hired me. And so that's how I got into the Vai fold, even though I didn't really meet Steve yet at that point. But so I got to meet Frank Benali and Kevin DeBro, rest in peace. He passed away. But I ended up working on what was the last Quiet Riot record with Kevin. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time learning from Neil at the mothership. That's how I got to meet Steve Furlot. I met Art Kelm, tons of people. It's too many people to name, but I loved that studio, and I got to learn on the API. And through that, I ended up meeting Steve because he was working at the Harmony Hut, which really wasn't a studio at that time. It was just a little shack. So every time he needed to do a real project, he'd have to come to the mothership. So I met Steve that way. And then Neil, he's a freelance dude, so he was busy. So I ended up kind of slipping my way in to doing stuff for Steve, like transferring tapes, things like that. And I think at the time, Vi didn't even really know how much I knew or what my skills were. He just kind of was like, I need these jobs done. Can you do them? And I figured it out. Even if I didn't know how to do it, I just kind of figured it out. And then from there, it elevated to working like, oh, I want to build, I need to do, I think it was like a couple years of doing just various things. And then he ended up wanting to do Where the Wild Things Are DVD. And so he had an old Neve sidecar at the Harmony Hut, and he's like, I'm going to trade this to Vintage King, and we're going to get a bunch of gear, like 500 series, some patch bays, and just some stuff because I need to mix this. And so I helped pick all that gear out. I wired it all up, designed the patch bay. I'd never designed a patch bay before. I knew how to use them, but I never knew how to do that. Just figured it out, did it. And then we ended up doing the Where the Wild Things Are DVD in that little shack. And Michael Mesker can tell you a little bit about that too, because that's how I met Mike. And he was editing in the back room at the same time while I was doing some Pro Tools stuff. They had a Final Cut, I think Final Cut 7, 6, I don't know, rig, and they were editing that. So I don't know. Are you following me? Is that too much?
No, that's great. I don't know. Hopefully everybody else is still on the internet there. They're like, I think it's amazing. So that is.
Yeah, I haven't told those stories before. It's kind of hard it's just coming back to me. So I might be going a little quick.
No, I love it. I think it's great. I think what we'll do is we'll cycle
about that reggae band.
I know.
Later.
I didn't know about the reggae.
I don't think you've ever told us about that.
Yeah.
And I love that. What we're going to try and do is cycle through, and then because we want to make sure that by the time the next group of people start knocking, but like the neat thing is that sooner than later, the fun part of this is when we get to the collective conversation. It's going to be great. Mm-hmm. Stephanie, we kind of bumped into one another a little bit at, I think it was the Petrucci camp.
It was Vi Academy.
It was Vi. Okay, it was the last Vi Academy, but we really didn't get much of a chance to hang out. But I know a little bit more about you now. So first of all, Stephanie and Stephen Bradley, they run 9/9 social media marketing
I guess
managing?
digital, yeah, it kind of becomes a lot more than what it is, depending on who we're working with and what we're doing. But I guess digital marketing, you
Yeah.
would say. But we do things for guitar companies too, where we both play and we'll play, or it depends on the client what we're doing.
And that's John,
We
who's
don't
joined
play with Steve, obviously. Steve does that.
Yeah.
us.
Don't touch a guitar with Steve in the room.
Jon Bingham has joined us in the lower right. So, how you doing, John? Good to see you. Welcome aboard.
Hey, everybody.
John is with Synergy Amplifiers. We're going to come to you in a moment. Stephanie.
Yes.
So, hang on. I'm going to do some more props here. So, amongst other things, besides co-managing 10 million rabid fans and working with brands, you also used to hang out and jam with Hans Zimmer. I'm stretching that a little bit, but you worked with Hans Zimmer, and you also played a little guitar with Hans Zimmer, and you also teach at the Dreamcatcher events. It's been postponed, but at the Petrucci Camp in 2021, you're going to be one of the guitar hosts. First of all, hello.
Hi.
What would you like to, what haven't we covered that is a juicy tidbit? And then there's another question that came in of what's it like to be kind of, a woman guitar player in this kind of time. And, there are a lot of dudes around, so it's, you're kind of holding the torch up there.
Okay. I think it's really weird when you're a girl because everybody asks you that, but I've always been a girl, so it's not weird for me. I do think you get more hate and more praise. Like, it's never in the middle. It's always like, marry me or kill yourself. And you're like, how about like cool song, So I think that would be better if people kind of chilled out in the middle. But I guess really the great thing about being a girl guitar player at this time is there's so many of us. I have a few really great friends that also play guitar. I'm really close with Yvette Young and Gretchen Menn. And, we all really sound different, but we are all the same where it counts, and we get along really well. And we set each other up with stuff and help each other out, and it's really great.
That is phenomenal. All right. Steven, with a V. This poor guy, he's been with a PH in my phone for like 2 years. So like the first version of the social media post, I'm like, PH thinking like, I've got this. I'm like, he's like, it's with a V. I'm like, oh. So my favorite thing about your social media feed is there's this great shot of you, the Grey Poupon shot on, I don't know, Diplo's jet. So you literally are a jet setter. As I recall, first of all, you have your roots
in a former life.
In your former life, before the former life, heavy metal band with like 10 bazillion views on YouTube back in the early days. So you've done the player route. You've done the jet set route with the Grey Poupon. And if you've never seen the Grey Poupon commercial, we apologize. It's got to be on YouTube somewhere. Uh-oh. No.
Uh-oh.
Oh, you offended him.
He did not like the Grey Poupon. All right. There we go.
Just getting
So
some Grey
offended.
Poupon.
That's right. Well done. That's good. He was like,
Grabbing my mustard.
oh, there we go. So
Product placement.
Product placement. We're going to put it down in the affiliate marketing.
Grey Poupon influencer.
That's right.
If you go to greypoupon.org and enter code.
That's right. Oh, that's great. Nice. So you work with all these crazy artists that are, Billy Ray Cyrus. Like, if you think about, like, Billy Ray Cyrus and then Steve Vai, you don't necessarily think, the same audience. Just say it. So
They're not. It turns out they're not. Not much overlap there.
Not much overlap. So, first of all, I love, first of all, we've collectively gotten a chance to work a couple of these guitar camps together. And the first and foremost thing is, like, if you can't do the hang thing, you don't last. So what's neat is you kind of came in, yes, you came in from the Vi affiliation, but you were still kind of newish. But you guys have been part of the glue, and which is great. Is that, we got two for the price of one. All right.
A twofer.
Okay, let me introduce these folks, and I'm going to come back to the tail end of this question. Dave Morrison from Isoacoustics is in the second row, and the third over, and then down below we've got Mike Orrigo from Ibanez. So guys, just give us a wave.
Hey, Mike.
Guys, can you hear me?
Okay. Hey, Dave, can you hear me? So this is where the video. He's about to don the phones. So, with that said, tell us a little bit about the nuance of what you do. Like, you've got to be able to read the audiences. Stephanie, Steve had made the comment before. I think you guys probably saw it. That like he's like, hey, we got to post this, and you're like, Steve, bad idea.
Those secrets shall remain with Steve, Steven, and I. We also need to give a really big shout out to Jerome, who does the website. He's awesome. Steve and him are always in contact.
Yeah. And speaking of an awesome dude, also an awesome dude, the real MVP of life in general, wearing a great shirt, Mike Mesker, though.
Mike Mesker, welcome aboard.
Audio. Give me a second here.
Okay, so
Hear ya.
Steven, go ahead and so what's it like to kind of have to speak to those different audiences? How do you do that? So say for example, somebody is a metal person. Is there a metal language? Is there a Billy Ray Cyrus language? Is there a Steve Vai language? How is a social media, and Stephanie, you're welcome to answer this too. How do you learn to decode the love language of the audience without necessarily knowing that style?
Getting to know the person.
After you know like every time I don't know, if we get sort of a new client, you sort of are like, okay, I got to research here. Unless it's someone like Steve, who we've known previously, and like with Steve, Steve's awesome, and Steve has such input on everything. Like we work with a lot of different companies, artists, and everything, and some of them are just like, I have a BlackBerry, and I'm never going to get Instagram. Good luck. And then there's people like Steve.
Really into it, which is cool. Like it's very collaborative with everybody, which is very cool. But Steve is tech savvy.
Like Greg said, and anyone who's worked with him knows, like he knows what he wants. He's a super sweet guy. He's never mean. He's never a jerk at all. But he knows what he wants, and he has a vision, and he knows what he wants to do and post and all these things. He just sometimes wants some tech help, some nerd advice of various kinds, and I don't know, we just sort of fill in the gaps for any of that stuff and help edit videos, shoot photo, come up with like a rollout plan if he's doing a new anything, and I don't know. It's definitely collaborative, especially with Steve. It's awesome because look at this chat right now. It's like super collaborative. There's always a million awesome people to work with, and like somebody like Mike who's done his art stuff for so long, it's super cool because I don't know, there's a lot of people who just like bounce from thing to thing. You're like, oh, this shiny object, where Steve is like, why would I do something else? I got Thomas, I got Greg, I got Ivan and stuff. I got Mike. Like I have a squad who know exactly what I want and crush it. And yeah.
Phenomenal.
And Steve doesn't say y'all, but Billy does.
That's true. We don't say, there's no y'all on at Steve Vai himself, but.
Well, and like Greg said, Steve pushes the limits, like the boundaries. Like we said, hey, maybe you want to do a live stream. Yeah, I'll do 2 twice a week for 2 hours, and one's on this and one's on this, so it's collaborative, but Steve has a lot of say in his own ideas, and it's him. And he's the most interesting out of everyone we work with because we know him the most personally, because Steven is really good friends with Julian and Fire, Steve's sons from before. I got to meet all of them through Steven before we ever worked with Steve. Pia is like one of my favorite people ever. They all are. They're just great. And so, we saw Greg around the house forever before we were working together.
I don't feel like anybody works with Steve who doesn't, like, you just end up knowing his whole family because he's such an awesome, sweet dude. I don't know. I feel like everybody that works with him, like, can't possibly sing his praises enough. And it's, like, true. I don't know. And everybody that meets him ends up being like, oh my God, the guy from the cover of every guitar magazine ever is a sweet human who shook my hand and just said thank you to me. Why did he thank me? Oh my God, he's so nice. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I come from a shred guitar background, so I've seen Steve on magazines my entire life, and I never thought he was, he seems so untouchable in this rock star, but he's so nice and he's so kind. So I think that was something really cool that I got to see, was you can have it all. He has an awesome family, he's got an awesome career, and it's a really cool thing to see.
That's awesome. So just so everybody on the panel and everybody that's watching has an idea of what the goal here is we've got these amazing folks that have a huge wealth of information, not only a huge wealth of information, but a huge wealth of information that has been applied towards the career and the musical exploration and the creative exploration of what Steve Vai does. And as you might imagine, these are some of the most creative, talented people in the business. So the best part about this is you're kind of getting a chance to see the sort of people that you normally don't meet. So I'm believing that you guys are going, this is the greatest thing I could possibly be watching on the internet. So I'm going to be trying to gather phone text that my buddy Andrew is sending through, and I'm going to kind of let everybody walk through their verticals, and then we're going to go into a little bit of a round robin where people can do a crosstalk question. We're going to be answering questions together, and that way it's just kind of everybody has presented on their vertical, and then we get a chance to kind of have opinion. So now the hard part is picking the next people, but I think I'm going to go in order that they came on the call because that's politically safe. So, Jon,
yes, sir.
We met and spoke earlier today. You're a glorified amp geek. You work with Synergy, and Steve has traditionally used the well, there you go, the Carvin rig.
Sure.
And this is a pretty radical departure. You are, correct me if I'm wrong, national sales manager for Synergy and boutique amplifier distribution. Is that correct?
Yeah, Director of Sales and Marketing North America.
Excuse me, Director of Sales and Marketing of North America.
I know. I need a fancier shirt.
No, I needed a fancier job of looking at my notes. So that's what happens when you wing it. Ladies and gentlemen, lesson number one. So the thing is that we spent a bunch of time talking about the nuances of these. So I want to one, let you set up to do your thing, but the other thing is I want to lead with some pointed thoughts about this. Very sophisticated gear. It has its background with the modules with Bruce Egnater, but it's been through a couple of different generations. It's kind of ended up in the Randall stuff. And, you know, the Randall stuff came out 10 or 15 years ago. So this has had a long gestation period. Why don't you tell us about how Steve kind of came into your mix and kind of the development process and what you think makes these modules, especially as it relates to, like, Steve Vai using them, so special?
Sure. So, as the story goes, Steve sent out for a bunch of different amplifiers from a bunch of different companies when the Carvin thing kind of came to its close. And Synergy was one of them. We were just one of many companies that sent a bunch of gear over. And, you know, he was very gracious about it. Kind of said, I want to demo all this stuff. I'm looking for my next thing. Whatever I like, we'll talk. Whatever I don't like, I'll send it back. Not a big deal, right? And so as it turns out, he very much liked the stuff that we sent over. I mean, it's a very, very organic sort of a thing. Synergy is really cool. For those who don't know, this is going to sound like a product pitch, but it's just so you know what Steve's working with now. Synergy was Bruce Egnater's brainchild way back before it was called Synergy. And the concept was to give you all of these different preamps that you can literally slide in and out like a Nintendo cartridge of an amplifier. So if you want one day your amplifier to sound like, you know, a Fender Bassman or a Marshall JCM 800 or whatever the case is, you're literally taking these circuit board, metal enclosed cartridges with tubes in them, and there's teeth on the end of it that slide in just like an old Nintendo cartridge. And, you know, those little teeth are circuit traces, and they go to the corresponding places on the in the amplifier. So anyways, you slide it in, and boom, all of a sudden you have the front end of whatever amp it is that you're looking for. And we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, 21 modules right now. Now, early on, Bruce was doing his takes on things. So we have some modules that are called 800 or called B-Man instead of Bassman, for example, because there was no licensing agreements in place. And skipping ahead 20 some odd years now, working with us, what we've decided to do is kind of incorporate everybody in this business together as one. So instead of just doing our take on all of these different things and all of these different amplifiers, what we were really doing was saying, hey, Reinhold, what do you think about doing this project with us? Hey, Steve Fryatt, what do you think of doing this project with us? And so what we've done is built this giant collection of preamp modules for this system that are completely made by the respective companies that they're representing. So you're not getting a hypothetical model of something. You're actually getting that guy's preamp that he's designed, and it's gone through this massive brain trust of great builders like Dave Friedman and Reinhold Bogner and Stevie Fryette and Peter Ahrens and all of these great guys by the time it comes to this final product.
Awesome.
That's cool.
No, that is phenomenal. So want to also, in addition to our esteemed panel, just want to let everybody know the plan that we're going to do is once we kind of get through this next little phase here, we're going to answer a bunch of questions from chat. Just that way you guys are included in this process. But I also, you guys have schedules, and so I want to make sure that we also give you guys the opportunity to do that because that's it. One of the things that you had mentioned earlier today was that the power amps are Stevie Fryette's power amps. So those VHT power amps are like the esteemed, like they were the sound of, does it go back as far as the 80s or was it the 90s? But those giant VHT power amps are like
late 80s.
That everybody was using. So he's building the power amps, and there's also 12AX7 preamp tubes in the power amp. Can you speak to that, please?
They're phase inverters. Yeah, at that point, they're phase inverter tubes. So they are 12AX7s, but that's what's used for that. So Steve did this really cool thing a few years ago. Have you guys seen his LX series power amps? They're 50 watts a side, so a 50-50 power amp with tubes. They're actual legitimate tube power amps like they've always been. However, he completely redesigned the transformers so that now these power amps, instead of being like, you remember the old big ones were enormous. They were like 4 rack spaces.
Huge.
So now he's got a 50-50 power amp that's a single rack space, and it's really unbelievable. And so that's where the Synergy 50-50 power amp came from. We talked to Steve and said, will you do this? We want that. And so, yeah, that's where that came from. All 6L6 powered. Big iron inside of it. It just so happens that the iron's not shaped like it's conventionally shaped. Now it's flat and wide.
You
But
guys
it's still all there.
are not seeing my screen share, but it's coming out over the stream. Hang on a second. Let me go ahead and do a screen share so you guys can see it as well. So give me just a moment.
Cool. Hey, Thomas, by the way.
Hello.
Hey, everybody. I haven't had an
Excuse our
opportunity to say
snoring
hi.
dog, please.
There we go. All right.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's a peekapoo.
Oh, cute.
Okay.
Hey, there we go. The screen share's up.
Okay, the screen
there
share's
you
up.
go.
So I'm gonna.
model.
I told you I'm gonna be your tech person. You tell me what you want me to navigate to, and I've got your images here.
Sure. Well, why don't we go to the Vi module, the face of the module?
Yeah.
There we
Yeah,
go.
it is.
Yeah. Isn't that something? So it comes in green. It's the only module that has color, and I love it for that. I want the rest of them to adopt colors. Maybe I'll get my way one day. But this green one, this is cool. So the Vi module is very cool. It has 2 channels built into it. They're completely discrete channels. So the blue channel, which would be the bottom channel that you're looking at there, folks, it's a gain, bass, middle, treble, and then a volume, and it's based on Bruce Ignator's B-Man, which is the Bassman clean. So if you're looking for any information on Synergy, or let me rephrase that, if you have the Synergy system and you're curious about this module, the blue channel is going to be like a Fender Bassman kind of a thing. You've got the addition of a bright switch and a fat switch. And then the top channel is based on Steve's high gain channels from the Legacies. And from what I understand, they went back and forth quite a few times to get that right because, Steve's a tweaker. He wanted to make sure that it was exactly right. So we went back and forth, and yeah, we're all pretty confident that we've got it. That's going to be, again, a discrete EQ. So you've got bass, middle, treble for that channel as well. Gain, volume boost, 3-position bright switch, and again your channel volume. And both of the channels are foot switchable on these modules, and MIDI controllable.
I don't want to interrupt, but I have a comment on the module before you move on.
Cool.
Crosstalk. Here we go. It's starting now, and awesome. Yes.
Yeah, well, because I've been heavily involved. Thomas knows with the whole synergy thing.
Of
Peter
course.
Ahrens, Dave Friedman. I've been the main middleman between Steve and them, and just what I mentioned before, Doug, was that Steve pushes things to the limits and he doesn't take no for an answer. So that module is a perfect current example, because what Jon didn't mention yet was that the pots on each of the knobs are detinted, and that's none of the synergy modules are that way, and that's because we wanted that. We have EQs like studio EQs that are that way, and we like to recall them, and Steve pushed Peter like, nope, you're going to find the pot, and it delayed and delayed and delayed till he found the pot that could work, because he's like, there's no reason why you can't put one, and also he fought with Avi about the color. Steve's like, I don't want mine black. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm not going to do a module unless it's a different color.
Such a good idea.
And and Avi's a great person, and that's just the collaboration with everybody. It's just working with those guys, for us, it's a new relationship. So I don't know if they really understood the dynamic that of the process of working with Steve, but now I think Jon can say like it's a good result. Like that sticking out paves the way for more signature modules that might be a different color.
I hope so. I
So-
like the look.
Jon,
Yeah.
so at this point, we're going to try and sustain the free-for-all, but without a free-fall. So,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to steal.
no.
Greg.
This is great. So
Greg.
you got
The
20
people want-
modules, but correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, I did not see a quote-unquote Mesa-esque module. So that was one of the questions that came in from chat. When or why? Is that a
I think when is a better question than why.
okay? Excellent.
It's
Right.
yeah. Conversations around. We reach out to as many people as we can. We've talked to a lot of guys, and very few have completely shot us down.
Okay.
There's been a few, but I'm gonna leave that alone.
Okay.
I'll let
We're-
everybody just talk themselves into a frenzy on that in the gear page.
Oh, good. TGP. All right. I'm going to move over to Mike Orrigo. And again, everybody that's on chat, I'm getting questions fed to me. So we're going to do lots of questions. And I apologize if you're feeling unheard. I'm getting lots of text here. Mike Orrigo. First of all, look at the double neck there, dude. So I pulled out, I had to pull out a couple of things. So that one is kind of a one-of-a-kind double neck vintage Ibanez Strat P bass. Happy Yoshida was at an event. Actually, I did it with Steve Vai at Zone Music, and Happy was like, I've never seen that. So it was really cool. Mike,
I've never seen that. I've never seen anything like that. And if Happy said that, that means something, because that's a 30-year man.
That's a 30-year
Plus.
man. That's actually it's on one of the catalogs. You can actually get to, if it's still on the website, on the homepage, you guys have got a place where you can look at the old catalogs.
Yep.
All right, sorry, I'm going too inside here. The goal is to invite people into the green room, but not have you feel like the door blew open. So just know that. So with that spirit in mind, Mike is the artist relations manager for Ibanez. He is one of many people, one of my favorite people. I mean, if you look at that smile, he is always smiling. Pretty much, he deals with lead guitar players all day long. And as everybody on this call knows, we're a persnickety bunch. Mike, can you send me another guitar? I want another one. I know my agreement says I get this many, but can I just have one more? And so, like, I've been working with you for a decade. You have kind of risen through the ranks. As you put it, anything that comes, actually, let me rephrase. Rumor has it that anything that comes through the LA Custom Shop passes through your hands, and you are the person that takes care of guys like Steve Vai. And there's a new guitar that came out that you're going to tell us all about. So with that introduction, one of my favorite people, Mike Orrigo.
Well, I that's one of the best introductions I've ever. I hope I can live up to that.
I'm sure.
But I just want to say hi to all my friends. It's good to see everybody. Hi, guys.
What's up?
Nice
Hey.
to see everybody's
Hey.
faces.
I saw you the
David
other day.
and Jon, nice to meet you. I don't think we've met in person yet, Dave or Jon, but nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Doug. And yeah, I'm the Ibanez Artist Relations Manager, whatever that means. I do a lot. I work with everybody on the Ibanez roster, based out here in LA, where we have the Los Angeles Custom Shop, where it's a lot of fun. At the custom shop, it's just 10 of us. We have I technically work for Hoshino, and Hoshino is the brand holders of Ibanez guitars and Tama drums. So we do all the artist relations, a lot of the artist relations out of our little office in LA, and piggybacked onto the office is the custom shop. So basically, not to brag, but it's the coolest place in the world. It's pretty cool. I get to see, I literally get to see logs come in through the loading docks, and then a few months later, guitars show up. The guitars just they don't magically happen. It's a lot of work that's involved, and a lot of back and forth, between the artist and Tack, our master builder, who's been with the custom shop now, running the custom shop for over 25 years, I think. So yeah, I pretty much lead a charmed life. I'm very blessed. I can't imagine how the heck I got myself here, and being here and with all of you guys right now. But yes, something really cool in recent memory, which I think everybody or a lot of people here had a hand in helping us with Ibanez. And, a lot of thanks again to everybody on this, because it couldn't have gone better. The launch of the new Pia model, which is the new Steve Vai signature guitar. It's kind of the Gem reimagined, the Gem evolved, and we were working on it for quite some time. I don't know, Doug, do you want to ask me questions about it, or do you want me to just?
I'm pinning your video, bud. Oops, there we go.
Oh no!
Oh
okay.
Yeah! Oh yeah! So like,
I got some visual aids.
Come on, bring it on, dude. Bring it on.
So 1987. Doug was talking to Steve about this when he was on earlier. So 1987 was the release of the Ibanez Gem, and now it's just become synonymous with Ibanez. It's become synonymous with the electric guitar. It's one of the most instantly recognizable instruments. I've talked to people that don't even know who Steve is, but they know that's an Ibanez, which is kind of crazy when you think of it. It's almost transcended his name to some people. And what's cool is that this is a reissue. This is my personal guitar. This is the Gem 77. I'll grab it. Sorry, Gem 77. Gem 77. 37.
37. Oh, look at that.
And so this is the fabled Loch Ness green.
Oh,
that's so cool.
And so so when Steve approached Ibanez, and this is before my time, 1987, I was 2 years old. So I'm just going to go from just the kind of hearsay. But, so a lot of people were clamoring to have Steve Vai endorse their products. And Ibanez was the first company, I think, that really took Steve seriously in building his guitar. A lot of guitar companies were willing to build guitars for Steve, but they seemed to not want to build Steve's guitar. And from what I understand, that's what's helped separate Ibanez. And this is where it started. This was the first Steve Vai signature model, the Gem 777.
That's so cool.
And some of the interesting things about it, some of the staples would be the double locking tremolo and Ibanez Edge tremolo. And which was really cool at the time, they recessed it. Now, so on Steve's Gems, this is called the Lion's Claw. It's kind of dug out, very aesthetically cool feature. And at the time, I think you could see on some of Steve's earlier guitars, he actually chiseled out. He'd installed double locking tremolos on his own guitars, his Strat, and he would chisel out the area so he can pull up and go wild on the bar. So we kind of added a nice little aesthetic touch to it. But the other big things would be the single hum pickup configuration. You didn't see that a lot in a lot of earlier guitars. And with going with the inside coils in the 2 and the 4 position, that was something because Steve liked Strats a lot. But also like the sound of humbuckers, and this is the best of both worlds. So, not to spend too much time, this is the gem. This is where it started, and it was probably around 2017 when this physical guitar that I'm holding came out. This is the reissue, where here we are celebrating 30 years of the gem, and we're just kind of, we're at the NAMM show. We're at the corner. If anybody's been in the NAMM show, we're at our booth, and we had it right on the corner, right in the walkway. So at the time, Steve, and if anybody's seen Steve at the NAMM show, it's literally just pandemonium. It's absolutely crazy. I double as a bodyguard at NAMM for all the artists. I'm pretty much chucking people behind me, and I think there's like a Mike Orrigo hate group on Facebook because there's so many people. There's so many pictures of people that have been abused by me at NAMM, just trying to protect my artists. But I remember Steve, as I'm crowd controlling, Steve's looking at the gems, the displays. We did we issued all three. So we had Loch Ness Green, Desert Yellow, and Shocking Pink. And he's looking at him and he goes, "You know what, Mike? This is great. 30 years. This is amazing. But I got an idea." And then I was like, "Okay, Steve," as I'm throwing people away. And then afterwards, like maybe a week or two after, no, probably that following week, I went over to Steve's house and went to talk about this idea. And that's where we really started getting started on the sequel to the Ibanez gem. It was the biggest, or the most different Ibanez gem, or the most radically different from the gem that we've ever done with Steve's guitars, maybe since the 7-string, since the Universe. And that's the Pia, which I grabbed at the office a little bit earlier. So this is the Ibanez Pia, and it's absolutely beautiful, if you ask me. We went back, and the first thing you'll notice is the pedal grip. The pedal grip is a lot different than the monkey grip. It's not as functional. I think Steve would even admit that. It's not as functional as the monkey grip, but you can still get a good grip on it. I have big hands, and I can still get my hands in each hole. So that's it's pretty cool. And then with the pedal grip, Steve, and it's so funny to hear you guys talk, and it's such a similar experience to what I have with Steve, is that he knows what he wants, and that's it's you have your work cut out for you, as hard or as easy that may be. Knowing what he wants, it just lets you know that what you have to get done, and his quest for excellence is just inspiring. So working with Steve, with this design, Steve had an aspect of all, or he had a hand in all design aspects of this guitar, and we love it. The response has been insane. It's absolutely beautiful. Everybody, I think a lot of people on this feed have had a hand in helping out with this. With I coming into the house and getting feedback from Greg on it. Mike Mesker, bravo, sir. And then from the launch with Stephen and Stephanie's help, I mean, it just, from all facets, I am forever grateful for everybody here. And from in all indications, the guitar's already a hit. With what we're dealing with the situation with the pandemic, it's affected production, as you probably can imagine. But early indications that we have a real hit on our hands. And
that's awesome. Hey, Mike, what pickups are in that particular model?
So these pickups are brand new. These are, everything about them is brand new. These are the DiMarzio Utopia pickups.
Utopia.
And they're absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you guys, tell me if I can't see myself right now.
No, that's
amazing. Yeah.
Drooling.
Okay. So you'll notice these laser etched. I believe they're laser etched, right, Mike? Or they're laser cut. They were designed. This design here was designed by Mr. Mike Mesker, who's with us right now, and they're just gorgeous, if you ask me.
Yeah.
What's really cool about them, and I don't want to steal Mike's thunder. I'll let Mike speak more about that. But the Utopia pickups, they were amazing. I got to watch Steve, test out the several prototypes that DiMarzio sent through with these pickups, and just to watch his process. Yeah, and it just speaks to Steve's just vision, his unwillingness to compromise, and his vision towards everything that Steve does. And he's got a great team of people helping him, but we're all inspired by his vision. He's definitely setting the sail. So yeah. Utopia.
Is it lighting or some of the frets scalloped?
So the frets are not scalloped in this one. Besides these last four, 21, 22, and 23, and 24 are scalloped. That's a gem that actually started with the gem 777, and it's been always part of Steve Vai's high-end signature models ever since.
That's the second time I'm drooling today, dude. That guitar is so beautiful. All right, Mike, that sets me up to go from Mike to Mike. So Mike Mesker, let's see. I'm gonna start pinning video, I think, at this point. So let's do this, and then let's see if I can not completely destroy the file sharing as we do this. Mike, let's see. Mike is an art designer. He is a lover of the art that surrounds a phase in an artist's career, a moment. And that's actually is a really, really special thing. Earlier I mentioned kind of the David Lee Roth era. That Eat 'Em and Smile, Steve Vai is one of my favorite Steve Vais. And you've had the privilege of kind of being around a number of the different revolutions in persona, working very closely with Larry DiMarzio. You obviously work in a number of different formats. And, you have a couple very interesting guitars behind you, which...
Yeah, actually, I should swap it out for something that was, I didn't even think about it, but there's something a little more appropriate. Give me 1 second.
Ah!
Now that's an OG one. That beats mine, right?
So, yeah, that green one is the gem that Steve used in this David Lee Roth stand-up video.
Oh.
Wow.
Silence.
No, that's really
You win.
cool. Yeah,
You
that's
win.
really, really cool.
So, Mike, I'm going to be your B-roll here. So when you want me to go to something, I'll hopefully go to the right thing. You've named everything, so let me know when you want something.
Well, sure. You want me just to do a little rap about, how I came to work with Steve?
Yes, and I am here to work. Yeah, so give us.
All right.
Yes, please.
The story. Well, I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and I've lived here for a long time, so my accent is sort of a weird in-between accent. But I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and my father is a guitar lover, and he's a collector of Gibson guitars, but also just a man of exquisite taste when it comes to the best guitar players that are kind of out there. So I kind of grew up on things like Alan Holdsworth and Jeff Beck, and so as a kid growing up in Australia in the 80s, Guitar World and Guitar Player magazine were my source of all news. But they also must have come over on some kind of slow boat to Australia. So in, August, I was reading the May issue. So, I used to consume these guitar magazines from cover to cover. My dad always used to get them religiously. And so, during that time, obviously, I kind of became aware of certain brands. And, and then, of course, my father also introduced me to Steve's music by bringing home, it was through the Attitude song in Guitar Player magazine. So anyway, flash forward, I, studied art in college, and I went into advertising and digital media in the mid 90s. And I kind of moved from that into more of a music focus in the early 2000s. So I had a friend who worked for Steve, and I kind of slowly got to know Steve through my friend Rich Pike, who is like an awesome human being. So he was doing Steve's website and all sorts of kind of related stuff, and I got to know Rich when I moved to Los Angeles, so Rich introduced me to Steve, and eventually I kind of moved into, Rich was doing Steve's website, and I moved into that gig. And then over time, I started working on, creating Steve's album packaging. And around that time, I met Larry DiMarzio, who, of course, is a pickup legend. But I met Larry when he was doing a photo shoot with Steve. So over the years, Larry and I, had developed this really beautiful friendship, and to the point where we kind of made perfect sense for us to start working together. So I started working for DiMarzio a few years ago, in a more official capacity, and Larry and I, we talk all the time about the things that we like, art, music, and photography. Advertising. And so, we've had this kind of really great open dialogue for many years that just surround the kind of the things that we enjoy. And, we got to talking one day about, like that no one's really kind of done anything ornamental with pickups. Every other aspect of the guitar is, a flourish is added, but somehow pickups, sure, I mean, like not to completely outrule anything that's come before it, but, it seemed like this opportunity for us to kind of create some kind of extra ornamentation on the guitar. And so, Larry and I started playing around with, ideas of laser etching, and then we started getting into laser cutting. And, of course, from that, the Dark Matter 2 pickup was born. And the Dark Matter 2 pickup kind of happened at the same time as Ibanez was developing the Woody guitar. And this was based around Steve's Alien Guitar Secrets camp, where he focused on the making of a guitar. So Ibanez worked on this guitar, and unbeknownst to Larry and I, we worked on some pickup concepts. And when we came together at that particular Vai Academy camp, it seemed like this natural fit for these two things. They kind of locked together, and coming from sort of different directions, they kind of merged as like a very cohesive instrument. So that was one of the first kind of pickup designs where we did the laser cut cover. So beyond that, we started getting into strap design, and then the new pickups for the Pia were kind of based on the same ideas as the pickups in the Dark Matter 2. So we kind of, Larry and I were talking constantly about some of the ideas we had about, we were kind of talking about things like Versace and, certain Italian designers. And at the same time, Ibanez was working with Steve on the Pia concept, but there was this kind of gap where we didn't necessarily know what was happening with Ibanez early on. And so it was kind of like we were both developing these ideas. And again, they kind of based on the same kind of brief from Steve. And they kind of came together in this very sort of beautiful way with the Pia, where kind of organically both the ideas sort of merged together. I mean, I obviously had an idea about what Ibanez was working on after a certain amount of time. And Ibanez knew the kind of things we were working on. And so we were sort of able to kind of bat that back and forth between us and develop the covers for the Pia.
Does that sound like a good cue to cue said photo? So hang on, I got to do a little screen sharing here to cue this up so you guys can see it. So here we go. These are absolutely gorgeous. Look at that. I mean, and the interesting thing is you're talking about the thing that you loved about those different records was they allowed you to kind of see the evolution of the artist, but you're doing the same thing with the guitars that the artist is playing.
Check it out.
So I take it you'd like me to hold on the humbucker for a second. So tell us about that. That is,
I mean, you could kind of go through these three, the Pia pickups, the pink, the white, and the black. But to touch on what you were talking about, something that we talked about the other day is that I've always been, very interested in artists that had, like a coordinated package that went with the release of an album, for example, or like they'd put out a record and there'd be this whole new phase of an artist with a whole certain look, and certain style, certain colors. And then, the next record would come out and they'd be a whole other artist again. So, as that pertains to, what we were talking about with the Pia, I saw an opportunity to really kind of synchronize a number of different design cues throughout, from the pickups through to the strap, for example, in the case of the Pia. Going back, if we're looking at the straps that DiMarzio did to coincide with the release of the new Universe guitars, again, we worked with Ibanez to take design cues from the guitars, and I actually took samples from Steve's actual swirl guitars, some of his classic swirls, to develop the swirls for these straps. So we'd photograph them in high res, and then we'd create a swirl for the strap that you could match up alongside Steve's actual guitar.
Wow.
I'm going to pull one of those up here because it's actually kind of crazy. Hang on. Actually, I tell you, keep going. I've actually got something a little bit better.
Man, that's so cool looking, Mike.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
Mike,
I have you pinned, so I just have to unpin you to see what everyone else is
I'm
saying.
a pinhead. Let's see. Hopefully I can do what I'm trying to do here without doing something stupid. Okay, good. There's hope. 1.
You know you're going to have to grab that double neck and bring it up close before the end of this, right?
6.
You don't look busy right now. Just go ahead and grab it again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Let's see if I can get this launched. Here we go. And let me take a moment and get over to here and pin this so you guys can actually see this. We're looking at this. Here we go. So the funny thing is, Mike, I think you and I met here. This is Vai Academy 2015, as I recall.
Uh-huh.
So this is obviously...
We deployed this stuff on Steve, so he's seeing it for the first time in that picture.
Well, phenomenal. So that obviously on the left is Larry DiMarzio. And that arm right there, I'm 90% positive that is your right arm. Is that correct, Mike?
I'm pretty sure it is.
So, and I managed to get your camera in focus at least.
Yeah,
so this shot was just kind of like, there it is for the first time. These guys, look at the swirl patterns. And this one is one of my favorites because this is really the world according to Mike. That
right. So these were some of the prototypes. So early on, as I say, Larry and I were talking about etching with a laser, and that's really kind of cool because you can play with reflective and matte surfaces. And then you can see here in a few of them we've got like kind of like a lighter coating with a darker design coming through. So. I think that the one in the back on the left is the first test laser cut that we did.
Oh, awesome.
So, we refined the design beyond that, obviously, but that was our first try. And I had to design those in CAD. And I've never worked in CAD before. So that was kind of a little scary kind of part of this, but we figured it out. And so, yeah, I think the cut one is in the back.
I got one last photo I got to pull up because this really kind of sums it up. It's like, there it is. Really lovely. All right. Let's see if I can get out a screen share here and actually not destroy. There we go. And all right. So we're going to come back to everybody. And like I said, thank you for everybody that's been hanging out and just enjoying, hopefully, the stream. If you've been enjoying it a quarter as much as I have, it's going to be awesome. Dave, first of all, everybody in this group, and hopefully a number of you out there, there's an audiophile side of creating guitar music that happens after the sound leaves your instrument, and you're actually having to monitor the reality of the performance that you just embellished your heart and your soul and your blood and your sweat and your tears and the decades of practicing and the strings that Thomas put on there and showed you how to intonate your guitar at one of the guitar camps, and you're actually there where you're actually having to make sense of it. So Dave is a dear friend. He is the founder of Isoacoustics, Dave Morrison, and I'm going to be going through a couple of images here that I'm going to go through, but I'm going to let Dave kind of take things away. But the short version is this, and I'm going to go ahead and pin Dave. Without stealing his thunder, your listening environment is grossly impacted by everything that's upon it. And if you've ever stuck the headstock of your guitar up against, for example, a sheetrock wall, you understand the transference of energy. And that transference of energy into your recording desk means that energy, instead of being used to create a clear signal, turns into what Dave eloquently calls smear. And as it relates in guitar speak, that smear, in addition to affecting the initial transient of the guitar attack, which is very important, for those of us who love copious quantities of delay and reverb, the place where it affects, in my opinion, the depth of field that as guitar players we spend so much time not just listening for our direct sound, but the wash that comes afterwards. Again, if you think about Eric Johnson, who uses Dave's products, the nuance of sound that follows the initial transient is a huge part of what we do. And if we don't hear that accurately, it means that something leaves our studio in an inaccurate representation of it and goes out into the world, and we sit down in somebody's car or somebody's living room and we cringe. So with that introduction, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce one of my favorite of many favorite people, but Dave Morrison. We've known each other for the better part of a decade. He's won a bazillion NAMM awards, best of show. His sound speaker isolators are in studios all over the world. I can neither confirm nor deny that they're in Abbey Road, but I can strongly hint that they could be. They are everywhere. Fluff, who was on here a heartbeat ago, uses them, and they're built into studio desks, and they have been rumored to be even in Mr. Vai's studio, hence why he's here. So Dave, with that long introduction, tell us what it is that these things do and why they matter, and tell us about yourself, please.
Thanks, Doug. Well, is there time for me now after that? That was something.
It was something.
Thanks. Listen, maybe I could just start by saying we started off in 2012 on the pro side, and we're also in the home audio side. So we've developed 2 channels, and we're getting into live sound as well. But maybe I could put this into perspective by saying there's really 3 things to think about. Everybody gets the first one. Is the speaker exciting the supporting surface and giving off dissonant sound? So going from a stage or the desk or the shelf that you've got your speakers on, you can manage or attenuate that energy exciting that surface. The second item is the structure-borne noise that we recognize, disturbing your neighbors or causing anomalies in the room. But the third item is not really that well appreciated, and that is that there's actually energy that's conducted right back up into the speaker. It mechanically reflects off the supporting surface, and not only does that introduce smear, but when you have 2 channels, any artifacts of that are similar in both channels, we perceive them to be in the middle, and so it causes a soundstage to collapse and become 2-dimensional. So one of the first things that I hope you recognize when you use our products is that soundstage opens right up and becomes 3-dimensional, becomes more natural and more airy and more spacious overall. And that's really the heart of what we do. So besides turning kind of a passion and a compulsion into, or an obsession, if you like, into a business. We do quite a bit of testing at National Research Council in Ottawa, and we use the anechoic chamber to verify that there's no coloration. We're not changing the audio spectrum at all. We're not losing the bottom. We don't have that bass suck out at the bottom. But the laser vibrometer actually tells us more. And that actually shows us that energy coming back up inside. It shows us what's coming back up to create the smear and collapse the soundstage. So where you might use an isolator of some kind of homogeneous material, whether it be rubber, foam, santoprene, or whatever you please, by using 3 elements, we actually can extend that isolation across the whole audio spectrum, and by a weight. So we always do things by weight and define an empirical curve for each. And that's how we tune everything, and that's how we make it work. So now we've gone from 1 SKU back in 2012. I think we have about 60 products now for Pro, Live, and for home audio. And manufacturers are starting to incorporate our products in their products as part of their delivery.
All right, there's one guy I got to go to the big guy here. Hang on a second. Let me make sure I'm not totally hosing the presentation, which I am only doing ever so slightly. Get out of there, and let's get here. You guys aren't going to see this right away, but I have a feeling a bunch of the people in this little hang here are going to recognize who this is. There we go. So you might have heard of this guy named Jimi Hendrix. Had a little bit of impact. I think some Aerosmith in there. So obviously that's Eddie Kramer, one of the most esteemed producer engineers of our day. Obviously seeming to be pointing at that product. So Dave, I mean, kind of, you grew up, there's the Eric Johnson guitar behind you. You're a rock and roll guy. I mean, what's it like having a guy like Eddie Kramer going, hey, you need to be using that? That's got to kind of, I'm going to unpin you, by the way. That's got to kind of float your boat a little bit. Yeah?
Oh, yes. Oh, that was fun. I mean, I had the opportunity going into his studio, and we tried the pucks. He was gracious enough to play along with me, and we put the pucks underneath. And as soon as he heard it, he was kind of stopped and was surprised at how much it opened up. And yeah, it's just grown from there. And of course, before I left, we turned on some Jimi Hendrix tracks that he'd been working on. It was like, because Jimi Hendrix was the one that lit me up when I was a kid. I saw him in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens in that trashy sounding place, and that's part of my DNA, I guess.
That's pretty lovely. I think everybody's going to
Wait,
yes.
Did you see Jimmy live? Were you able to see Jimmy live?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, no,
that's cool.
That's legend.
This is also back in the days when it was in an arena, and when you sit at center ice and you can hear the sound coming off both ends of the place. It's kind of it's a little different than what you're used to with the record.
Man, that must have been cool.
But the energy was fabulous. It was certainly something to remember when you were a kid.
I think
that's awesome.
There are some people here, although will probably recognize this. So can you tell us about what this little guy is doing? Obviously, those are microphones in a legacy cabinet. But you had mentioned you got into the live sound. You're actually working with, in this particular case, the Stage 1. So kind of pontificate about kind of the grooviness of those. I will say that Eric Johnson is using them under his monitors, and it enables him to get an accurate live sound in a venue where the floor, if you've ever played in a venue and you've seen the drum guy back there feeding back because of the side fill, the reverberant nature of the stage plays a huge role. So those isolators are a way to be able to actually have a great mix back in a live remote. Can you give us just a little bit about that before we go into the free-for-all and mad questions from the troops?
Well, actually, I'd like to say that Greg's been a great help. When I start playing with new ideas and that, I can get a hold of him, and he's usually very responsive, and he gives me his honest feedback of what's going on with that. Obviously, that That's a picture that Greg has provided. But that was the whole premise, though. Actually, the way that story started was I was approached by a tech for the tech that works for John Mayer and Lenny Kravitz. And he was telling me that he was having a problem with on the stage that the reverb springs were clashing when the bass drum was hit. And they were starting to use the isotox to mitigate that. And he knew the hi-fi isolators that we were developing, and he wondered if they could be screwed onto a board. And I thought, well, we could build a better application than that. And that's what started the stage one housings. And then we went from that to actually building it within a board, an ABS board that's very inert. And again, Greg was kind enough to play with them and give me his feedback, and we produced them, and now they're available.
Well done, mate.
Do you remember my one negative feedback that I gave you on those?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Is it the angle?
No, it's the fact that you didn't have your logo visible.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Actually,
So
I'm still not clear on Thomas's input on the Velcro, where that would fit in. It still isn't incorporating Velcro yet.
Oh, Velcro master. The master of Velcro.
My license plate says VLRCMN Velcro man. So
better with Velcro.
you
All right,
First
master.
saved his life.
when Nike came up with just do it, I came up with just grow it. So,
I love it.
Chris is a good thing. No, that always comes in really handy. Not only pedal boards, all along in my day environment. On my phone here in the back, you see, all this is Velcro. So in my jacket, I got the hooks, so I put it in, and they can't fall out. No one can take it. You know.
You can't even answer your phone.
Oh, you never answer your phone.
Oh, that's he doesn't answer his phone. So, all right. So the great thing about this part is now it's just a free for all. So one of the questions that came in at Thomas Land was, and everybody can answer this. So Orrigo, we're calling your number on this one as well. Tips for changing strings on a floating tremolo, and all of us have been there. So like. I have my own, but I'm going to shut up because I want to let this esteemed panel. It's to you, Thomas. But once Thomas, you share yours. Everybody is for you to jump in, please.
There's always 1,001 ways to do it, and then once they say only one way is the right way, but that's not true. Everyone has their way. I just whatever I learned from watching people. I remember as far as stretching the strings goes, which is obviously all day a job for Vai, for him to have the show ready for whammy acrobatics. But I remember with Frank, the second tech that Frank Zappa had, David Robb was his name. And he worked like forever also he was actually Jimi Hendrix's tech also. And so I saw him, the way he did it, and he stretched the strings in a Z shape. So that would be one thing. Anyway, so as far as changing it with a Floyd, I always put either a 9-volt battery or a AA. I cover it with tape right before I do anything, and lock the bridge so it stays in that position. Then I open up, motorize the strings off, save the old strings because of the DNA. 5 years from now, we all go to the DNA store and we get clone up, So that's fun. Anyway, so I save the strings, and then Tom Rule from Cheap Trick showed me that once the strings are off, the bridge is still in the same position. I use the ball. I line up the tuning pegs to where they point shortest distance to the nut, put the balls in, then in one cut for wherever the bridge is the furthest back to be safe. One cut, all 6 strings are cut, put them in, and while I get to pitch, whenever I'm in pitch, that battery will just drop out, and you don't have to start from scratch 100 times back and forth. So, and stretching, of course, that's from there on out, but that will be sort of a pretty safe way to do it. You can change the strings either from the inside out or whatever. There's various opinions on all that, but to me, it's all only in the end between the finger and the string. And give Jeff Beck any guitar or missing strings, or even out of tune probably. You'll hear the player, so whatever. But yeah, so that's my quick way. I think that made that I learned over the years. Tom Rule showed me that cutting off, and that's each string with the cutting it here, then cutting it here, as opposed to go in one cut and it works. I must have no bad experience. Never had a breakage on the ball end, and you have, by doing so, you have like minimum revolutions also, instead of you want the less of the better, because the string is alive from where it's from one end to the other. So in terms of staying in tune, even with a locking nut, I'm not a favor of a locking nut, with no disrespect to whoever created the locking nut, but anyway, that's just my opinion.
All right, hang on. I got one for you, Thomas. Hang on.
All right.
The man in action. Here we go. Back the number of times. So this is Vi Academy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I love the scarf.
Well, that was from a fan, from a Steve Vai Academy attendee, young from South America. The mother gave me that. How nice is that?
That's cool.
That is lovely. All
I
right.
lost it, of course, already.
but
No Velcro.
no.
Yeah. That was
Oh, that's great. All right, does anybody have any other tips on string changing, or are we moving on?
I think Thomas
I
nailed
think
it.
we just learned from the best. Yeah.
up.
All right, I've got one.
That's how it's done.
So let's say you show up at the gig and your guitar is doing the freak out thing. Like there will be, if you don't have Thomas, every so often you show up and the guitar is not wanting to stay in tune. So and I've also found the same trick works for Strats. Strats like to do this thing where the high E string decides to start going sharp. Like you tune it and it's like there's no predictable reason why it does it. So what you do is you use the guitar's tendency to pull itself in one direction to go, fine, I'm going to tune you high E string down exactly however far you're going sharp. And then what happens is the Strat goes, oh, I want to go sharp and now I'm happy. And it's a funny thing because the Strat wants to go, this far sharp. And then you literally just take it that much flat and it just goes, it's fine. So the same thing, I was doing a gig and the bridge is doing this thing and I'm like, oh snap, what am I going to do? It works the same way with a locking fine tuning tremolo. It's like you just tune it the same amount flat. And what happens is the guitar's tendency to want to pull itself sharp pulls itself into tune. Next question. Does Mike know, hot seat, sorry, you're going to hate me for this, but it's a great question. Do you know if all PIA models are sold out? Or are they making them per demand? Was it a limited run? Whatever you can answer without you hating me after we're done. You're like, thanks, Dop.
Okay, so this right here, this is Panther Pink. Panther Pink, this is the new, this is one of the new, we released 4 models this year, 4 models. So there's Panther Pink, Envy Green, and Sundew Gold. Those are all the metallic finish. And there's also Stallion White. So Stallion White is going to be continued on up to the future, but this will be the only year that will offer the 3 colored finishes, the green, the pink, and the gold. So they are being made in limited numbers. I'm not at liberty to say how many. Luckily, no matter where you are at in the world, Ibanez is a pretty good distribution network. So you want to get with your closest Ibanez retailer, find out if they got some, and if they have some in there and they're still unaccounted for, get it, because these things, based on what I'm hearing, it's going to be a hot ticket. So. But that being said, the white one's going to be available. It's going to keep on coming. So if you're really into it, and I think the white one's beautiful. It's taking over for its predecessor, the Gem 7V, which is the most classic Gem in my opinion. It was actually the Gem 7V, and actually Mike Mesker, you can support me on this or not if I'm wrong, because you're more of a historian than I am. But the Gem 7V, I believe, is the longest running Gem model. Actually, or
Yes,
maybe the floral pattern has it beat by a year or two, but I think the Gem 7V might be the longest running.
the V has been continuously running, right?
Right. Yes, since its
Yeah. So
inception.
the
Right.
V came in 1993 with Sex and Religion.
Right.
So,
Yes.
Mike,
Yeah,
Yeah.
93. Yeah. So,
Mike,
yes.
in your phone is my address. I just texted it to you. Just letting you know. It's not my birthday yet, but that Panther Pink is.
I already
It is
had your
coming up.
address, dog.
My birthday is
now,
sooner.
now I'm never
Mine-
getting
Just
it.
put it
So,
out there.
all right,
My
so
birthday comes
Mine
before
comes
Doug's.
eventually.
so this is
Eventually
by the way, just in
Yes.
case you're ever wondering how to endear yourself to your artist relations person, this is not the approach. So just letting you know, don't.
I'm waiting for mine. I'm in line with you guys.
No,
I'm in line, and,
yeah, well, I don't get the chance to
You're
walk into the
holding
factory
one.
or walk into the LAO.
this one I borrowed this one, so this one I have.
I know,
these,
I'm
'cause
just kidding.
I haven't said no. I'll tell you because I knew. So everybody knows. This is actually the Hoshino. These are the Hoshino ones. I haven't taken these over to the house yet, but these are for Steve to sign.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then Hoshino's going to come and put it in a vault, and
That's
these
great.
are
Oh,
these are
that's
going to be
awesome.
the Hoshino relic.
Nice.
So I grabbed the Panther Pink because this is the one I'm eventually going to buy. And yeah,
No, that's
so yeah, get it if you see it. Yeah. So to close out, if you see one available, check out all your dealers, find out if they're getting some, and sign up for the pre-order. Do what it takes. Put the money down, because in terms of these colored finishes, they will only be available for 2020 for right now. But stay tuned too. There'll be some other cool stuff too. So if you missed out and you're not digging the white, just
that's
keep on
awesome.
keeping on.
Hint, hint, hint.
There
All
are
right.
other colors in the spectrum, right, Mike?
Last time I checked, I only see green, pink, and yellow. So I have to take your word for it. But physically, that's all I see. I only
Really?
see those colors. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. All right, John. A question about the cabinets. So, I can answer part of this question because I'm a gear geek. So the question is about what cabinets is Steve using, and the neat thing about that, I love a blended cabinet. But the interesting thing about the cabinets that you guys used on these, you didn't do the vintage 30s, which are on the bottom, and the
Greenback.
the greenbacks are on the top. You didn't do an X pattern. You actually put them one the other. Now, I also noticed on the back of the cabinets, I saw that there were 3 inputs. So I must presume that's a dual, and then can you tell us about the
You're
cabinets?
right there.
I got close. So why don't you finish it off?
Yeah, it is. It's a stereo cabinet, so you've got the 3 inputs on it. You can do the split or the mono. But yeah, it's the vintage 30s on the bottom and the greenbacks on top. It's it's a Baltic birch cabinet, all made right here in L.A.
That was a cabinet that you guys already had, so it wasn't a cabinet that Steve had you guys make. And how important was that cabinet in terms of the voicing? Because Peter Stapfer is somebody that I've known for a number of years, and Peter Stapfer is the other
Diesel.
Peter of Diesel, and Thomas was, well, of course. And so he's a great player. And one of the things that at the NAMM show, one of my favorite places to go, is he had this whole thing about you want to use the speaker cabinet the manufacturer makes because they've spent a huge amount of time and energy voicing their amplifier around that cabinet. So you miss all this information because you're using the wrong cabinet. So can you tell us a little bit about the relationship between the two?
Well, I mean, that's definitely the case with all of the products. I have a feeling that Greg and Thomas would have a lot of information on this because they were there for all of Steve's obsessing and demoing of all of this stuff. Am I right, guys?
Well, Greg probably more so as far as in the process how it all came together. I mean, when we did the NAMM gig, we got
Right.
the cabinets from you guys, but
Right, sure.
I haven't. That's that, and then I think the ones that are in the studio, the 2x12s. But Greg knows more probably the internals. I used the 2x12s for a couple of gigs with Steve already in town. So, but you might know more than I do.
Yeah, were you a part of that, Greg?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to wait till you guys force me to talk. Well, to be honest, and this isn't anything against Synergy, we did not have the Synergy cabinets when we were working on the Vi module.
You were using the legacy cabinets for the development.
Yeah, we used the 2x12s that Doug showed the picture of.
And is that loaded with
on the ISO acoustic?
Is that on top of the unplugged foot switch?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a quick eye.
That was my hack to get the angles because Steve likes to have the angle.
So are those cabinets were loaded with V30s, if I remember correctly?
Yeah. Okay. So they're real similar to the 2x12s you guys make, but the configuration that we have right now is that those 2x12s are open back. So that was what's cool about the. I don't remember if the Synergies are that way. So I don't want to.
Not unless you take a screwdriver to it.
Right.
Steve's are modular, like the carving ones. You could take the back off, and that's how we have them now.
With Velcro?
Some of them do, but not the ones that are there.
Just the ones that Thomas has handled.
There's another great thing on the Pia, which I would like to.
Yes. Come on.
Is that magnet? So that would be a good thing to do.
Mike, hang on. Let me pin you just one sec. Wait, let me pin you just one sec. How
inspired by
missing the moment. Come on.
Magnetism. It's the only thing better than crow, right, Thomas?
That's right. Yes. But the thing that I put on Steve Vai's guitars on the back of his headstock is that material from McMaster Carr. I put the tape on so it sticks, but that's $50 for just this. But I make these, that fit the back headstock, and 3-4 tools. They won't fall. You can rock as hard as you want, and they're there when you need them. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, hang on. Show us that again. Hang on. Let me pin you, Thomas. Here we go.
Yeah. This is the surface that the magnet is working, and so like I said, let me grab a tool here if I have one. See, that would probably work right here. See.
Oh, dude.
Right. Okay. So. And it's thin. It goes on the back of a headstock, as opposed to clips. I'm 74. I don't have every second counts. I can't start trying to find a hold of a Well, I'm serious.
Oh, anyway. That's crafty.
Yeah.
As we move forward, Thomas, we can, focus those magnets more and more. So, like, we don't even see them anymore. They're just like under the wood.
Right. No, but that when Steve showed me the guitar the first time here, I was like, wow, that's because I made it with a Velcro hinge, so you could open it always through you, so you wouldn't lose the lid. But this is it. This is the way to go.
Mike, can you show us the back plate again? Hang on, let me pin this now that it's working. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Yep. Nice, really nice. Yeah, and the same thing, cutout in the back too. That's the beauty.
Cutout, yeah.
And that's
simple.
That is a beautiful back plate too. It's gorgeous.
Wonderful.
Yeah, pretty cool. The pedal grip.
I have a question for Mike. I keep hearing you refer to that cutout as the pedal grip.
Yeah.
Where did that name come from? How does that?
I think it's a yin yang type thing. I think he said that sort of.
Yeah, there's some elements. There's some elements in there, and when we started drawing up designs for the Pia, we knew this was task one.
Sure.
It all started from this new grip shape, and originally we were thinking about single hole cuts, single hole like the Gem, like the Monkey Grip, but just different shapes. But eventually we started so. What's better? What's one better than one? Two. So we started drawing up some stuff.
Okay.
And
fair enough.
It's literally. So we started drawing, and then it was pretty instant. I think through all of us, through Steve and through us. Once we started, considering doing a second hole, completely separate, it was kind of a no-brainer, and. So the yin and yang definitely has a vibe. I wish I could show you some of the rejections. They got pretty wacky. This was by far the best. But we started talking about the grip shape and what it reminded us of. And Steve actually came up with the imagery of a flower petal. So PET, T as in Thomas, AL. So it's a flower petal. So we called it the pedal grip.
That's a great story. That's very cool.
Nice.
How much did the painters at the factory hate you guys when they saw that they were going to have to be painting inside of those two holes? That can't be easy to get right. And Ibanez guitars always have like a picture perfect finish. So getting, making sure there's no orange peel or anything inside of those grips must be a challenge.
It is, and it's 30. So we had 30 years, practice.
Yeah, sure.
With the jam. Now it's one more harder.
Right.
With two, and there's some tricks. I haven't seen how they do it in mass production. I can't imagine, but because I know how much work goes into a one-off at the custom shop, and you really can't, just for all the guitar nerds out there, and paint nerds actually, because guitar painting is a lot similar to most commercial painting, like cars and stuff like that, where you have a sealant and then you have a color coat and then you have a top coat. You really can't get into these holes and buff them out. They're just, you can't sand them flat and you can't buff them out. So it's a very careful process where, they're always mindful of the amount of overspray, and they're always balancing it because of the fact that you can't, because the rest of the guitar on a gloss instrument, there's several coats of top coat, and each one is sanded flat before the next one goes on. I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of that. You can't really do that on the inside of these. They can't be sanded flat. So it's a difficult thing, but luckily, the 30 year of a head start, we it wasn't too much of a hiccup for us, even though we added the extra hole.
That's cool.
That's great. I got a question here. Was asking about the tremolo arm, and Mike. Actually, I think Mike and Thomas and numerous people know the answer to this. So the big bar, I think, was Rob Nishida's thing. The big graphite bar, and somebody said, "Is it foam?" But I think it's a larger graphite bar that Rob Nishida developed, so that the bar wouldn't, when it moved, it wouldn't actually take a floating tremolo and make a warble or affect the pitch. Can anybody verify that? There we go.
That's the one.
So this is the ultralight bar. So I think you're right. I think it was during Rob's time, but and I believe I'd have to check with Joe on this, and Joe and Steve, but I believe it was based on their direction. And Thomas, you might know actually, because Thomas, you were there. But basically, what this does is it makes the bar that much lighter. It's the people who have held it, Thomas, you can back me up. It's just it's a fraction of the weight, and it's actually carbon fiber.
Yep.
It's made of carbon fiber. I have to take credit where it's due, because mainly I'm just a glorified middleman. I don't have much, I don't have much street cred in terms of this stuff, but I did name it. It's the ultralight bar, and I did name that. So.
Oh, virtual high five! Come on, dude.
Yeah, man. Check the mail.
Come on.
That's
there we go.
Cool. Oh, and the one other thing, this would be trivia the other thing I did, I'm just bragging now.
I love it.
But on this Pia Blossom, we have, if you notice, we did all the three of the special limited edition colors in there.
Wow. Nice.
That was you.
The green, the pink, and the gold, and that was my idea.
It's a great idea.
Nice. Very nice.
And that was only the colors were the only thing that was my idea. Steve had his hand in developing, but we were doing totally matching, and I was like, you know what? And it wasn't even my idea. I just really stole it from this guitar. That has all three colors.
You got 2 nods from Mike Mesker, man. You're batting 1,000 here.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my claim to fame. That will be on my epitaph.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. All right. Who had? So I've been mining questions, and it seems like my mind is getting. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. Okay. So I saw this on there, and this is for John. The Synergy Sin 1 preamp and put inside any of the modules? Do I have to plug in into an amp, or can it be plugged directly into a mixer? That was one of the things that I was.
You can absolutely go direct.
So
Absolutely.
can you explain that? So like, because I saw that it says that it's great for direct.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that you've got this preamp module that you're specifically getting then put into a power amplifier that is intended to reflect the reality of what happens in an amp head, but yet it still sounds great direct? I'm not saying it doesn't, but I mean that's kind of a big trick to pull off.
Sure. So the Syn 1 has a multitude of I/O on it. It's got its own built-in effects loop. It's got main output that would generally run into like the effects return of an amplifier or into a power amp, if you will. There's also a cabinet filtered DI, which means many of us here know what that means, but for the guys out there who might not, it basically means that an engineer spent some time simulating to the best of their ability the EQ curve of what this preamp would sound like going through a guitar cabinet. And so that's available. You can run that direct into a board. You can run the main out direct into a board and then use impulse responses inside of your system if you want to. So there's a lot of options you can do with that.
Question: the Randall 412 cabinet with the kind of fence-looking grill, I can't describe it, but it was a kind of like a metal mesh, had a direct out. It was kind of an X something or other, and that thing had a speaker emulation circuit that was one of the best speaker emulation. It was an XLR jack on the back of the cabinet. Do you know if this circuit is a carryover of Bruce's circuitry and work on that cabinet by any chance?
No, I have. I couldn't honestly say I know one way or another whether it's a carryover. So I'm just going to play dumb on that. I have no idea.
Awesome.
Sorry, guys.
This is a twofer.
Can I just ask a question to Stephen and Stephanie?
Uh-oh.
I have a question for Stephen and Stephanie. This is for my wife. Is that shiplap in the background?
Oh, Steven made this video wall. It's like randoms.
It's wood. It's not like.
Hi to your wife.
Hi to your wife, first of all. Yes. No, it's not any sort of fancy reclaimed. It's like fake Home Depot wood.
Well, it's
that
real wood.
Then spent quite a minute trying to figure out the pattern for and spacing out the boards. And
Yeah, the trick is you paint your wall a dark color because they're not perfect, and that way you don't see the imperfection.
that's the thing. If you leave the wall like white or beige, whatever the hell it is,
Yeah.
and then
It's
put them up,
a move.
you'll see
Yeah.
it popping through. So you got to paint the wall dark first.
Luckily, someone told us that.
That's
I
awesome.
actually have a question for either Mike Mesker or Mike Orrigo, because I don't know if everybody knows this, and I wonder if I should know this, but the Pia logo has the pedals in it. And I thought that was so cool. And I think Mike Orrigo showed us that at NAMM.
I'm going to guess that Mike Mesker designed
I know, I
that,
think
though.
it was
I
the
already
Mike
know that Mike
Mesker
Mesker
thing.
designed that.
I'll let you two battle it out, but I think it's very cool.
It is cool, yeah. I don't know if
No, I will not take
the
credit
logo on
for
the
it at all.
headstock.
That is Mr. Mesker's work, and with the pedal grip, and you can get a glimpse of that cool holographic Ibanez.
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
logo
there we
as well.
go.
That's a first too. That's a different thing we've never done that before, and I don't think the video is really doing it credit. You should pick one up.
Hang
when
on,
you get
hang
a
on,
chance. The
hang
white
on.
one has that too.
Let me pin you.
No, I don't think it's anything. I just
There you
think
go.
it's
There you
just
go. Oh,
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you can see it.
All right, let me get that pin. Hold on, my mouse has completely gone off onto the wrong.
Nice.
It seemed like a great idea to have 3 monitors until it wasn't.
And I don't know if this might be. I mean, we wanted
like
to
an
do
octopus.
holographic. We wanted to do holographic, but the happy accident
Oh, come on.
is that
There we go. Here we
it
go.
works with each color.
One more time. There we
And
go.
depending on where you're holding it, like
Ooh.
I remember some friends saying to me, like, why didn't you put a logo on the headstock? And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
what are you talking about?
Oh
Like,
my
Disappeared.
gosh.
And on each of the, on at least on each of the colored finishes,
Right.
Oh, that's
it
really
could,
cool.
totally, it could be totally green, it could be totally gold, and it could be totally pink.
Chameleon.
I remember I was at the
That's
NAMM
cool.
show and somebody was like, saw it from far away, and they're like, "Why didn't you put a logo on it?" I said, "What happened? What's going on?" and luckily it was just somebody or the holograph just playing tricks on it.
That's so funny.
Oh, that's
that
awesome.
guitar is just like the most. I don't know everything about it, and I guess I'm
It's
like obviously
classy.
biased, I guess, but like it's just so high quality. Like every part of it, like looking at it was cool, but then getting to like hold it and NAMM
Yeah.
was like, oh my god, this guitar just feels expensive.
And we got
nice
to play
and,
one
like,
in the
beautiful.
Harmony Hut before NAMM, and Pia handed it to me, and I thought that was so
It
funny.
is true, but
That's awesome.
I was like, Pia handed me the Pia.
but I mean that's like Steve's, not production model, whatever. But like the production
Yeah,
model is just
beautiful.
feels so like. I feel like looking at it on like a screen doesn't do it justice. Like how nice it is. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was like just getting. I think the best part of it, and I had this on video. We didn't make the product video, but we took video of of us delivering the first sample to Steve. I think the only thing that was different, it didn't have the Pia logo on it yet, Mike. I think that was the only thing it didn't have. But it was his first finished, and he opened the case, and just the look of his face. And maybe one of these days the video will see the light of day, but yeah, it's just things things like that. You just as a kid who grew up on Long Island, New York, and to be a
The
fly
guitar
on the wall,
mecca of Earth.
I guess, it seems that way, and not because of me, but because of where Joe and Steve grew up, and just everybody. But it takes me back to that, like as a young kid, just worshiping those guys. And to know that I had a small part in that history is, they don't tell my bosses this, but I do it for free.
a pretty large part, not a small part, but yeah.
Well, no, I mean I can't take credit for it. I mean, a lot of the team is here. I'm looking at their faces, and but I'm just the mouthpiece for at least for the artist, for an immensely talented and immensely creative, and I'm just one of the luckiest guys in the world to be working with the Hoshino family. It's a dream come true. It's so cool, and it's very cool. That's the only.
It's funny too. Like until like hearing it on the stream, I never thought about the fact that like pickups, and I mean to Mike Mesker's credit and Larry DiMarzio, of course, like genius. Like I don't know. You always think, like you said before, though. I've never thought about it. Pickups being like a work of art themselves. You're like, yeah, it's a pickup. It like gives it sound. It's whatever. It's it's got a thing. But like to have the pickup itself reflect the design of the guitar so much is crazy.
Yeah,
And it's
such
very,
a-
very unique for like the
Yeah.
last DiMarzio Vai
Yeah.
pickups, and now these new like Utopias. Like I've never even thought about that before, but it's crazy.
Look at
and
that.
the strap and
Like
everything is.
In a way, it's kind of like a deconstruction of a pickup, because it's like, when pickups have a cover, you don't really think about what's underneath.
Mm.
You don't think that you could see bobbins through that cover. And so, the idea that we originally had, Larry and I, through, just kind of talking about this, was like, well, yeah, you could put different colors under there. You could create this kind of dimension in something that is, for the most part, a utilitarian thing. But it should be a work of art like any other element of a guitar.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Well, it's like the plate on the back, the magnetic plate.
Yeah.
You see it and you're like, that's
Right.
so obvious. How is this? How did it take until,
Nice.
2020 for humanity to figure that out? But it like,
Yes.
That's
That's what
funny we
Steve
don't
had.
talk about.
2019. Sorry,
Just kidding.
I don't know. Well, no, it came out in 2020, right? You were doing it
Yeah,
in 2019.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
The point being, that's like, it's so, I don't know, it's like everything. You're like, oh, it's so obvious, but like someone had to think of it, and it was, I don't know which one of you brilliant folks. We'll just say Thomas. I don't know.
Well, I don't
It's
know.
all-
You
it's all
remember the
choice.
cool thing about the pickup covers is that back in the day, everyone used to take the pickups, the covers off, because it used to kind of muffle the sound, or just people thought that it didn't sound as good. So the cool thing, Mike Orrigo, you remember, we went through a lot with Steve where Larry actually had to compensate for the fact that the cover was on there. So that was a big deal where it's like it needed to sound correct with the pickups covers on.
That was 3 months of your life, Greg. That was 3 months of 18-hour days recording the same signal repeatedly.
Well, yeah, we were all there in the same room with Alex, recording for hours, just changing pickups and listening. And Steve would go in the other room and wait till the next guitar was ready.
Right.
Or the next set of pickups was the same guitar.
Yeah, it was a fascinating process. And one thing I think we were speaking about the pickups again. And Mike, I'm sorry if maybe I zoned out while you were talking about it, but one of the cool things with that, we've seen covers on pickups before. We've seen pickups without covers, and we've seen even laser cut pickups with the Woody with the dark matter twos. But the newest thing with the Utopias is the inserts that are in between the bobbins and the cover, which have another design printed on top of it. And if you can look at it, if you see, I don't know if I'm going to do it justice.
Hang on, let me pin you. Let me pin you. Hang on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Which adds another like three-dimensional kind of aspect of it, having the printed insert underneath, but in between the bobbin and the cover. That's just, to me, it's just ingenious. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Very cool.
Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
Hey.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's kind of like we wanted that extra detail. I mean, it's really just the same design kind of offset at an angle as line work, but it just sort of, it fills it in and gives that extra dimension. And so, again, like I don't know if anyone's done that before, but I feel pretty comfortable in saying that I haven't seen it before. So,
me too. Me too. I think, it definitely bears notice. I mean, it's another thing. It's like this guitar from far away, from across the room, you gravitate towards it. And then as you get closer, you just find out more and more things about it. And, it's still surreal to me. It's still surreal to be holding it. It's been a few years, since we started really getting down and into this, and it's just to see it now, it's so cool. And I can't wait till we get through all this crap. And, we can see it. We lucky a lot of us here were able to see it in action at the NAMM show, but a lot of people weren't able to see that. So, I can't wait to see it hit the road.
Yeah.
I got a question for the group, because I think just about everybody is going to have an interesting take on it. Is that we live in a different era in terms of content creation. Like Greg and I had a black magic moment. Don't mean we were practicing voodoo. We were talking about HDMI switchers, and then and that conversation spilled over into a conversation that I had with Steven, where we're talking about the fact is that it's probably 24 months before we're going to start to see switchers that are not HDMI based, but they're Dante based, and we're seeing this happening in studios where it's one cable. I think Dante carries 256 channels of audio or video, and it's a flipping RJ45 connector for that much data. But we're living in at the dawn of kind of like, and it's one of the great things about watching Steve master this format, go from like, I'm just going to jump in, to actually kind of going, really owning it. Like one of the videos had like 147,000 views within a week. For something that just started off in somebody's studio, you're like, snap, that's good. I'd love to get your take on kind of, one, that this period of time has actually been a period of intense creativity. And what's happened is it's kind of like the guitar players have been let out of the cage, and we're now like, we're all streaming. And whether you're a guitar player or you're a mix engineer or a reggae bass player or whatever it is, I'd love to hear everybody's kind of take on.
Or both. Mix engineer and reggae bass player.
How it's impacted you.
Greg's the only person not laughing when I say that. Greg's like, damn, I regret this so much.
No, I think it's awesome. I'd love to hear your take on it and your thoughts about it and kind of where you see it, impacting yourselves and the world around you.
I mean, it's awesome. I think, and it's just funny too, because a lot of the people we work with for a long time, it's been like, hey, you should do these live streams. You should go live, because for a lot of reasons, especially on your socials, like people get a notification for starters. A lot of these social media networks are now not showing your content. You know, all these people have clicked like, they've clicked follow, whatever, and they're not seeing all your stuff. When you go live, it's reaching more people, and people are sort of like, I don't know, it's for like the kids and the TikToks and I don't know. In the last 2 months, you've seen everyone simultaneously be like, this is actually awesome. This is really cool.
Well, it's kind of more real content again, because you can't edit it and you can't do anything. You're actually getting to hear somebody talk the way that they speak, not edited down. You hear them mess up if they mess up. And you actually do connect. I think when you're on the other side of the screen and you're going live, it is a bit odd to be responding to just text, you know, and you feel very awkward talking to a computer the first time or two. But it is totally a cool way to connect with people, and obviously you can do it with other artists. And
well, you're realizing too, people's sort of like real nature, like somebody like Steve, who's just so comfortable and so. I mean, he honestly, I mean, I don't know if whatever it is, but he's been sort of talking about wanting to do something like those Under It All streams, the more esoteric, like speaking about spiritual things for a long time, and he sort of was like, "This is the time to do it. This is a great platform. People are at home." And it's just reading the comments from people who are like touched by it and appreciate it is, you know, it's really cool. It's like, people love it. And then you also see some of these other celebrities get like canceled or whatever, because it's like, oh, their management, their publicists, all these people are taken out of the equation, and they get on the internet and say some horrific, like racist, like whatever. You're like seeing their true colors, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, good, you're an awful person, and now we're done with you.
Well,
or in the case of Steve, you're like, oh my God, I already felt this connection with you and knew you were an incredible guitarist, and a lot of people don't know anything else about him. And now they're like, you know, learning all this other stuff from him. So I don't know, it's really cool, and you know, making the best out of a crazy situation that we're all navigating together for the first time. Because
and you're actually seeing people in their real environment too, in their home, and it's pretty crazy. We've been on a couple different client calls like this, or where people even throw private Zoom calls with celebrities and other people that are just in their home performing to brighten up the people that they work with day or something like that. So
Oh, that's a battery.
That might be.
move on and get no.
Oh, back.
But
He's back.
I think it's very
that's
cool.
that 5D Mark IV auto shut off after
I was like,
for how long. I really didn't think we'd all be talking for.
That's what you keep doing
at all. I'm obviously loving it, but
dang Canon.
Oh, that's
good
awesome.
old Canon.
I'm thrilled with the fact that we've got so much positive content creation, because when everybody's at work, like, you know, your typical pre-quarantine work, all they had time for was fighting with each other about politics. Now they have time to fight with each other about politics and create positive content. So it's a win.
True.
Has anybody seen, and this is not to take away from what Steve's doing, but has anybody seen the videos that Charlie Benante's been putting out? He's been doing these awesome cover things with a whole bunch of different musicians from around the genre. He did like a Living Color cover with Corey Glover and with Rhea from Suicidal Tendencies. He's been doing these like every week, and I would have never in a billion years thought that I'd get to see like one of my favorite drummers playing a Living Color song that I also grew up with and loved. So it's really cool to see that sort of stuff right now. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah, Charlie's a Tama guy, and we've been helping out with some stuff for him and the guys that are involved. So yeah, it speaks on that. Steve and I had a Zoom call earlier this week, or maybe last week, maybe earlier this week, and we're talking about it, and it's just, I think, like, as Steven was saying, it's you know, the generosity and the realness is coming out from, you're seeing everybody's true colors in a lot of these live streams. And, you know, I think, at least for me, I could speak for myself, and your admiration for like somebody like Steve Vai. Here's Steve Vai, here's a guy, you know, guitar players around the world worship. just bearing it all, you know, either on the guitar with the alien guitar secrets or with Under It All, and giving you a window that, you know, most people would charge, like before this whole thing, people would charge for something like that. Like you'd have to do like a master class or something. And here it is for everybody, you know, everybody involved. And it's interesting. It's seeing this whole situation is, I think, making us fast forward about 4 years from where we would have been, but it's making us fast forward, like in terms of our social media approach and our content. We're doing things now that we might have not have really wanted or had to do had this not happened. So, you know, just by constantly looking at the positive, that's kind of cool to me, being forced to kind of evolve and change.
Well, it's cool. I will say, like, you know, whatever. He's a great dude. I don't care. Keep singing his praises. Like, to Steve's credit also, when his account got approved for these new Facebook stars where you can donate directly into a live stream, as soon as I was like, hey, you're approved, you know, let's set this up, W9, whatever, you do Facebook stars. He's like, yeah, great. We're donating it straight to charity. This is awesome. Let's promote it. We can take charitable donations straight into my live stream. That's so cool. Like, his first thought was,
that's awesome.
Charity. I don't know. So it's cool. Again, you're sort of stuff like that. It's like another example of you're seeing people's true colors. And Steve's immediate response was, awesome, charity. We can raise money right in my live stream for charity. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
I was thinking I was going to use it to buy a Pia.
Yeah.
That's not the charity.
That's a lot of stars. That's about 3 million stars.
It's a lot of stars.
Every star.
Yeah.
Because again, no, it's great. Every time you like show the guitar, I just want to be like, but you don't get it. Seeing it on the screen, it's not the same.
I mean, it looks really
as soon as
good
I
on the screen,
held it at NAMM, I was like, oh my god, this. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, it's like,
I have no horse in that race. I don't work at Ibanez. I'm not Steve Vai, but like, it is. I don't know. Such a high quality guitar. It's the only adjective that comes to mind. It's like high quality.
well, it's like when Mike Mesker was saying Versace and stuff. It looks so classy, that guitar, everything about it, all the details, and
You know
very,
what?
very.
You know, that's an interesting thing. It reminds me of some of the gate patterns in Florida. So it's interesting. I was trying to think, because I was trying to go through my brain about, because there was also the period of time where Steve was wearing the Versace shirts, Fire Garden era.
Right.
So
right. Yeah.
So it's
conceptual continuity, my friend.
Yeah. Where's Larry DiMarzio?
Yeah.
Where's Larry DiMarzio?
He's in Montana.
You got a 24-hour live stream with Thomas and Larry DiMarzio. That's it. All three of you guys are going for it.
Wow.
I'm watching the whole thing.
All right.
Let me check and see.
Yeah,
if
I do, Doug. I do think you need to do the whole episode with Thomas. I would be. Thomas, you are a living legend, my friend.
Yes.
And
I'm the oldest guy on this.
it's not even about age.
That's all.
Age is but a number. You have, you know, I feel honored just to be on the same web screen right now with you, and I'd love to.
In my case, it's all thanks to Frank Zappa. You know, without Frank, that's my whole American life anyway. You know. Frank, having died at 52 with 80 released albums with unmatched content, right? Well, and that's how that's how Steve's whole thing started, by transcribing these songs. By the way, I only recently actually opened that Videology book, which I obviously clueless all about. But what Steve knows and what he's done in that book alone, like, whoa, my God, that's how he got to Frank, to transcribing Frank Zappa solos. And when I first saw him at the Zappa house, I think Warren was a guitar player, Warren Cucurulo, and I saw Steve, and he just looked so good. That's what I noticed first. Leather jacket, beautiful, you know. So, and then I realized, then he was in the band shortly thereafter. And, but Frank Zappa definitely is the biggest event in my life, and still is. You can go on YouTube now and open up any interview with Frank. This is a guy that never said, fill us, you know, like that. straight A to B. Anyway, so just thought I'd throw
So
that
like
in.
the maximum amount of information with like the least words possible.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
How's that motorcycle, Thomas?
It's the best, my most prized possession.
You been out riding?
Oh yes, of course.
It's
And by the
technically
way,
social distancing if you've got your helmet on.
that's correct. But let me say this: I was on the Kiss tour, and they cut it short, three shows because of the 14th of March, and then as time went on here, we all realized zero traffic. I mean, unbelievable. Yesterday, 4 or 5 gridlock already. It's back.
Yeah.
It's now coming back again. It's already back. And of course, as you may have all noticed, those street races now, this is like a virtue. I mean, I had an Aston Martin and a Lamborghini on Ventura Boulevard, like, nonstop. So this is all new. So it's almost more dangerous than before, in a way.
Man.
But yeah, crazy. But the scooter is my most prized possession. With that's how I can do everything I do.
And you have an unbelievable talent. I've seen this man. He's come to the Los Angeles Custom Shop. And I think, what's the record, Thomas? You put like 12 guitars.
Well, not 12, but 8.
8.
Eight is still more.
And one was a triple neck, by the way. The one was a
So then it's probably like 9 or 10.
Okay,
man.
well,
Give yourself some credit.
Yeah, I have about 500-600 photos of my 30, 40 years here with my scooters, right? Of what I've been doing with them, and some of those I would never do again. That was when, not today.
Because that triple neck case is like the size of a coffee table.
It was huge, yeah. But it came, it's one neck came off, It's how it always was assembled.
You're right, yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, that triple neck. You're talking about the hot guitar.
Yes.
Not the white triple neck.
No, not the white one. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there you have it. New World Order in full swing here. No, I don't know how this, personally here, speaking about this, I guess concerning everybody, how can this go on when no one can like work? Whatever you do for fun or not liking to work, but how is this all gonna? I'm just curious, with the money and all this, how's it gonna work out for everybody?
We have to sell guitars. We have to sell.
Yes, indeed. Oh yeah, absolutely.
People have.
Well, you might get a new Steve Vai record this year.
That's.
We better.
That'll be great.
Yeah,
we need it.
And I, as long as I always tell Steve for 2 decades now, I thought a great album title would be, or at least song title would be, Viabolical, because that just makes sense. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Bart Simpson.
Oh, there we go.
What was the other one? When somebody called it Wi-Fi? When you use your
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
My Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
Wi-Fi went down.
Yeah, and all the companies over the years that tried to get Steve wants to be wireless, as we all want to be, but he's just never really happy so far. In the Roth days, he had to be, with the 80s, whatever, he had to be wireless, with Billy and stuff. So, and I did, the last one we used was a Line 6 to G90 professional thing for like 200 shows, and but he is just so critical, right? It's whatever. So Line 6 Guy Coco invented the first digital wireless X2 in 97, 98. And when I started with by 99, we used that. He had one set, and he tried it out. He said, I like that better than the cable. So we used it. It was 900 megahertz. So 2 years later, in Italy, the cell phone platform would step on that. So, cell phone in the call. So he was always there. But Line 6 has been working, I don't know what's the case now, but on a new system that supposedly will totally is. And so Line 6 said, if they succeed, if he loves it, and if that's it, can they call it wireless? Get it?
There you go. So many good vibe puns, I will say.
There is a lot of good ones.
So, anyway, so.
Well, lady and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, nice, smart. I like it.
Just the one.
Yeah.
What? Where? Okay.
What's up, Doug?
It is-
Senor Doppler.
It is echoing further and further into the evening hours, and everybody has been wonderfully generous with your time. And I just want to thank you. Really, I hope, again, the people that have been hanging out, and first of all, everybody that's been on YouTube and Facebook, thank you so much for just hanging out, and hopefully you've gotten stuff out of this and inspiration and information, and who knows, maybe there's a new guitar into your future. Maybe an amp module. There you go. And some pickups. And, you know, just been great.
And a dog.
And a dog. And a new Vai album.
Oh.
And Velcro. And some isoacoustic
Right.
stands. And I just want to thank you for checking out. First of all, I have due diligence. If you haven't subscribed to the channel or hit follow or whatever that you can do on Facebook, please do so. Also, if you're on YouTube, ring the bell. That way we can let you know when these go on. These happen every week. Normally, I'm a Wednesday night kind of person. And next Wednesday, I have another amazing special guest, Mr. John Petrucci. And we get a chance to hang out with some of the Petrucci clan and some manufacturers. Maddie's going to be here, another one of my favorite people, and you know, a bunch of the folks from the manufacturing side of things. It's going to be awesome. And if you get a chance to hang out, it's going to be, you know, obviously because I studied with Joe, my heart is very well entrenched with decades of practice in the Steve Vai camp. And, you know, I will take a moment and give you guys a thank you. You know, I first met Steve, I was 18 or 19 years old. He was kind of in post-Zappa, living in LA, playing clubs as an instrumental guitar player at a time that living in LA, playing clubs as an instrumental guitar player did not necessarily seem like there was going to be a lot of career in all of that. But what Steve did is he followed his passion, and he just went with what he felt he needed to do, which is what has made him who and what he is and the legend that he is. But I just want to thank each of you because, you know, there's a part of me that remembers that Steve Vai and also has seen the meteoric journey and then just this thing that has, you know, just continued. And each of you has played a role in that. And you know, I know that there are people that are watching this that I am 99.9% positive feel exactly the same. And just really, you know, it's easy to be in your office somewhere or out on the road changing strings and be in some ways removed from that. You know, you're in a factory and some fish named street in the valley out there, you know. Mike knows who I'm talking to. I'm not revealing the name because I don't want a bunch of people showing up at your door. It's just like, hey, Mike, can I get a pia? And, you know,
It's happened.
I'm sure it has. And, you know, just the idea of taking Steve from an amp form factor that he'd been with for a very, very long time and bringing that through, you know, to helping him realize the sound of the studio, helping him, you know, become as relevant in social media as he has ever been. That's a big deal. Isolating those speakers and cabinets from the floor. Thomas, Steve Vai couldn't do Steve Vai for 20 years without Thomas. You are
Thomas, the real
I would
MVP.
say that.
it's just there. And Mike, it is so brilliant to see somebody with that level of artistic design bring that level of artistic design this far into the game. I mean, it's just like, you know, if you think about your average trajectory of an artist, Eddie Van Halen's guitars already had the stripes at Van Halen 1. So you've added, right? You know?
It's like game over.
It's game over. It's like, where are you going to go from
Nothing
there?
more to add.
You know? But yet you're like, hey, you know what? We can come back to this swirl theme. And then we can actually innovate even further than that. And that, you know, I mean, I hold this, you know, to be at the Vai camps. There we go. Come on. There you go. And when you walked out, because the case it came with this, and it's a very clever thing, it's a unique case. None of the other cases are like this. So when you're walking the halls at the Vai Academy and somebody looks at you, looks at the case and gives you the nod, You're in.
That's the knowing Woody look.
That is it. So
I've got a Woody.
spoken like a true Australian. So, in any case, just thank you so much. And again, everybody that's hung out, really appreciate it. This has been so much fun, and I hope it's been great for you. Thank you so much, lady and gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Doug.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Have a
Yeah,
great night.
Job putting
fun.
this
Thank you.
together, man.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks, Doug.
See you.
I love you.
Next
I love
time.
all you guys. Love all you
Next
guys.
time.
You guys too. Guys,
Hey.
stay safe. I miss all you guys.
Nice to
Same
see
here.
everybody. Have a
Awesome.
nice rest of your weekend.
Right.
Thanks again.
Right.
Good night.
Yeah.
And
Bye.
Guys.
Bye bye.
we're going off the air.
We.
Boom.